taking control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all connected but separated, misunderstood and so frustrated. A million armies of one have invaded, watching you and watching me. We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. The little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye, we're the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. We the people have taken over. We the people are little brother, standing by to dethrone each other, watching you and watching me. Paranoid, the lens is our weapon, desensitized in our lust for attention, democratized by our voyeur obsessions, watching you and watching me. Slaves to perfection, don't let them project you as you are. Feel your every flaw. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye, we're the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. I know you're out there somewhere. This is the new totalitarian state. 1,000 eyes are waiting for you to break. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching. We watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Let your experience begin right now. From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio. You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can follow us on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride as we are live on Spaced Out Radio.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Said the deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you along for the ride as we are live broadcasting on spacedoutradio.com, on Spreaker, and on Revolution Radio. We welcome you to tonight's show as we broadcast out of Uncle Jimbo's cabin in the Great White North, live on this Monday night, early Tuesday morning if you're on the East Coast. Here at Spaced Out Radio, we broadcast 3 hours a night, 7 days a week, because we want to be your official one-stop shop when it comes to the supernatural, paranormal, conspiratorial, and so much more. We want to thank our resident guitar god, Ron BUMBLEFOOT THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, who does all of our theme music. Bumblefoot is the official sound of SOR. You can follow me on Twitter @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. At this time, I'd like to say hello to everyone listening in on the Revolution Radio chat room, on the High Plains Talk Radio Network, Truth Cat Radio server, in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, along with our fans on Facebook at Euphoria Chronicles, Chronicles of the Unknown, Forest Moon Paranormal, and our flagship chat room, the SOR Space Travelers. If you haven't signed up for the SOR Space Travelers Club yet, it's time. It's only $5 a month, and with that, your name gets entered in a monthly prize draws. You get access to private group interviews, access to a special section on our website, and much more. Hey, we're going to give you a hell of a lot more than just access to our archives. While at spacedoutradio.com, we can read our latest blogs. Check out Eric Markham's SOR Spacewire for your latest and weird news. And if you've had a weird experience, fill out the SOR Sightlines report. It's brand new on our website. If you've had an experience and you want it investigated by one of our researchers, just do me a favor. Fill out the Sightlines report. We will get back to you very, very soon. All information is 100% confidential. Remember, if you're a listener on Revolution Radio, it is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Do us a favor. Head to freedomslips.com and donate today. The run-up to this year's U.S. presidential election has taught us one major piece of history. Most will even ignore this fact. The conspiracy theorists were right. The elections are rigged. Take off your tinfoil hats and take a bow, people, because both the Republicans and Democrats rigged or tried to rig who would be nominated. We have Mittens Romney trying to publicly overthrow Donald Trump. Hillary realistically should be in jail for her roles in Benghazi, the 30,000 emails destroyed, having superdelegates trump the voting public to kick out Bernie Sanders from the race. It's a real decree of public mischief because they did it right in front of the media. And the mainstream did nothing to hold them accountable and did nothing for their jobs as the voice of the public. We're going to go and get into it tonight as more about cover-ups and whistleblowing with Stephen D. Kelley. He's a former CIA, NSA contractor who's had enough. He's a man who is about honoring the Constitution of the United States and is one of many who has stepped forward to say enough is enough. Cover-ups from elections fraud to extraterrestrials. What we thought only our other governments did, we are doing ourselves. And that includes my country and Canada. The one thing I like about Stephen is he's not pushing a book or trying to make $1 off of speaking out like this. He's trying to get the truth out there. Stephen D. Kelley, welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. How are you?
Hi, Dave. Thank you for having me. Very happy to be on your show. Great show.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate you taking the time, as we cannot seem to get this message out enough. Before we get too deep into it, and we get into the whistleblowing, I would love it if you could familiarize our audience with you.
Oh, gosh. All right. Well, I'm going to assume a lot of the people at Revolution Radio knew who I am, but I just suffice it to say I've been doing I went kind of public back in 2012 with that whole thing. And what I'm really known for, of course, is telling everybody about the big bunker underneath the Getty Museum. And I'm trying to draw attention to that. And right now, my big claim to the proof of everything I say is that if none of it was true, that this multi-billion-dollar entity would sue me and somebody would take me out. So they can't seem to do any of this, and I seem to be able to get away with it, so it must be true. And anyway, but I've been all over TV and what have you, and I think there's a lot of stuff going viral right now. We've been able to sort of tie in ISIS and 9/11 and all this conspiracy-type stuff, so the New World Order is taking really big hits right now, and I think all of our little efforts are really starting to pay off.
I agree with you in regards to that, because there is so much out there that we need to know as a public. And not just you being in the United States or our listeners being in the United States, but everyone around the world. It affects what I'm doing here in Canada. Because let's face it, when you have the largest countries with the country with the United States and the largest military that is around, and that military industrial complex, it really affects everything that we do on a daily basis. And it's amazing how we are said to be free, quote, end quote, but on the flip side, we see our governments doing the exact same thing that we said only the Chinese do, only the Russians do, only those communist countries do. You know what I'm saying, Steve?
Yeah, well, I learned that we had book banning back with Tesla, right? I mean, it wasn't until 1985 that you could get a Tesla book in the United States, and we're being told that only communist Russia does that, or they only do that in Nazi Germany. So obviously, and then you look into Wilhelm Reich. I mean, they threw his butt in prison and burned all his books. So yeah, we're book burners from way back.
Steve, about you, let's go back in your history. You obviously are a very smart man in order to, eventually get your job status as being part of the CIA and NSA as a contractor. How did that come along for you?
Well, they first of all, they do this legacy thing. They keep it in the family. I did not know my father was involved in this stuff until after he died. And I got recruited into this at a relatively early, somewhat young 20s, I think it was, to get involved with the CIA and during the Saddam Hussein when they were trying to give him weapons and such. But when I was dealing with the people that were giving weapons to the Contras, I thought that was the CIA. It turned out to be the NSA. I had no idea I was working for Ollie North, but that's what that turned out to be. And it wasn't until I had a falling out with those people and that I started doing something with the CIA again that they informed me that was actually the NSA that I had been working for. So, surprise, surprise, huh?
Was that a shock for you? Because obviously you don't get into it to get into this dark room rumor mill that seems to, always be out there as a story, Steve. But on the flip side, it's so far out in our imagination, it just cannot seem to click with what we are doing.
It's kind of cliche, right? You hear people, it's like the line in the bar, yeah, I'm a secret agent, I work for this guy, this or that. It's so cliche and so part of our American psyche. It's almost humorous. But no, you don't ask for this stuff. They do come to you. That's kind of the way it is. I know so many people now I've seen around me are being recruited because obviously these people, they look for talent. And as I recruit talent closer to me, it seems like these guys inevitably try to snatch them up. That seems to be happening quite a bit right now. But the, what can I say? It is dark business, and it was responsible. The NSA business was what really caused me to have that big wake up moment that we all talk about. When did you wake up? And yeah, that's the murder and the crimes committed on behalf of our country by these people are what really shocked me into having to start over and refigure everything out.
I am blown away by that, my friend, because when I look at it, and, I'm up here in Canada, so I'm not into the real depth of everything that is going on with, the hidden side of what happens behind the government. I like to call it the government behind the government. When you finally started to get your eyes opened as to what was going on behind the scenes, Stephen, what triggered it? What triggered you to?
Well,
all of a sudden,
I'll give you the exact story. I mean, this is actually like the big story in my book, but it was a very dramatic moment, and it makes for good radio. So I'll tell you the story if you guys have not heard it before. I'll share it with you, Dave. All right, but anyway, I was making lasers for this NSA company. And, it was all sexy, guns and everything and all that. Everybody thinks it's sexy. Well, I thought it was CIA, okay? And I was sort of like a contractor for these people. They wanted me to work for them and be like an employee, but I was avoiding it because, I knew better. But I was still their representative out there in the field. And I was sitting in the office with this director of this thing. His name was Bob Bozio. And he was this big man, kind of balding, dark hair, mustache. He's wearing this black shirt, short sleeve shirt, kind of like you'd picture, sort of a CIA cowboy might be wearing. And, he's got the desk sitting there with a hand grenade with a take a letter, and he's got the NSA flag in the corner, which is a black flag that just says NSA. And I'm thinking, oh, that must be a souvenir or something. You don't think, oh, NSA. This was back when they didn't really know about the NSA. Okay, it was still kind of secret. And anyway, he's telling me, I'm sitting there, we're just having one of these conversations, and he's telling me about an operation in Honduras, I believe it was, where they had a commando crew come in and surround the village and round everybody up and kill everybody. And then they'd fly in a helicopter, a big Chinook helicopter with a bulldozer underneath it, and they'd drop the bulldozer down, and the bulldozer would scrape a trench, and they would push everything into the trench and cover it up. But, we're kind of programmed to be kind of numb about stuff like that. And it wasn't the men and women, children that shocked me. Okay. It was the chickens and the pigs and the dogs and the cats and the goats and that stuff, because they started telling, when he started saying, yeah, we killed the men and the women and the children and the dogs and the cats and the pigs and the goats, and when he got to chickens is when I lost it. And I thought, you think that's strange, but I thought, oh my God, you had to kill the chickens? You could have just let them run into the forest? What the hell? The chickens, the dogs, the cats, and that's when I lost it. And I was in shock. And I realized right there that my country was capable of doing very evil things. And I realized that the good side wasn't so good, and the so-called bad guys weren't so bad.
That is an eye opener, man.
The black and white thing. It was no longer no longer was there black and white from that point on. So.
Was that a sad moment for you? Like, you were someone who went to college, you were a smart guy, you were thinking that you were doing right by the Constitution and living your law-abiding life, you got a job within the government, and then all of a sudden you realize this. Your heart must have just sunk deep down.
Well, I was a naive person, one nation under God and all that stuff, And I grew up, with thinking James Bond was cool, and I believed that my country did not murder and did not assassinate and do these things. I thought that was the other guys that did that. So yeah, I was disappointed that I was involved in that, to say the least.
You consider yourself a whistleblower, and I'd like to stay on this topic for a few minutes here, if you don't mind, Steve, because I think it's important. How hard of a decision is that to come out publicly with everything that you have learned, everything that you have been told is supposed to be a secret, everything that is supposed to, or that you feel goes against the Constitution? Was that a tough decision that you had to make? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there like you who've either thought about it and maybe said, I've had enough and committed suicide, or just keep their lips buttoned up and just say, this is the life I chose, I can't go any further than this.
Well, it kind of comes in stages, and I think that it sort of started before 9/11, and then when 9/11 came along, that kind of changed everything. And then I kind of had to withdraw for a while because, it got really hard on people, that were bucking loose cannons, got kind of dealt with. As soon as the Patriot Act came along, it wasn't so cool to be a loose cannon. And it took a little while after that, maybe a year or two, before I kind of got back into the swing of it and I got my balls back, if you will. But the thing is that if you're going to do this, and this is important, because if you want to apply this to people like, say, Snowden or somebody like this, or WikiLeaks or something of this nature, if you want to use this as a rule of thumb when you're talking about whistleblowers, is that if you've got information, and you've got information that can change things and wake people up, you don't sit on it, you don't release it in bits and drabs and milk it. You dump that stuff. You dump it on the world. You dump it loud and far and as wide as you can, and then you keep on it. So when Snowden says, "Well, yeah, I've got these documents, and when I'm going to release even more documents, I threaten," and then in WikiLeaks, same thing, says, "Yeah, next Tuesday, I'm going to do it. Next Tuesday, Hillary's going to be doomed. I'll get her next week." It's like, really, dude? What the hell are you waiting for?
I guess that's the whole hype around it, that they want to come out with that impact punch and play the media for what it is right now. And let's face it, anything Assange or Edward Snowden does is very, very juicy.
Well, the way I see it, though, is that if you're a real whistleblower and your life is on the line, you're sticking it out there, the quicker you get it out there, the better. Because once you get it out, then you don't have to worry about them taking you out. You've done your job, right? And then if they do take you out, that only makes your information that much more credible. So, that's the way I feel.
Stephen, you're one of the rare few out there who has come out as a whistleblower who isn't interested in making a profit on this. You're not trying to use your name as someone who's trying to, sell 1 million books or have that website that gets 1 million hits a month or something along those lines. Why are you taking such a different stance than many others of your brethren and sisters have done?
All right. Well, I don't want to say anything bad about anybody else, and I don't want to make a big issue out of that whole thing. But I used to have a lot of money. Okay, I used to have a pretty decent amount of money, And I've walked away from more money than you can imagine, well, more than one time, because it was blood money or something like that. And I kind of forgot what it's like, because everything's been taken away from me, my family, my home, my business, my friends, everything. And I'm just kind of surviving on what little I have. So I'm not looking for new possessions. I'm not looking to rebuild my life. I'm on a mission. Imagine if you're going into battle and you put on your weapons and your uniform and what have you, and you go into the field. That's what you've got, and you keep having that and using it until you are dead or the battle is won. And then you can think about R&R, and you can go home and have your GI Bill and what have you. Well, I'm too old for a GI Bill, but I'm not there's no R&R for me until this is over. I'm not like Alex Jones with $1 million house and a big platter of beef, riding my horse on my ranch, telling people how horrible things are, spending $1 million a week. I mean, my God, you got to understand, Dave, I'm not allowed to have money. Okay, that's for one thing. I am not allowed to have money. I'm one of those people that's dangerous if I have money, because I'm an inventor, and if I have a certain amount of money, I can make things that they don't want me to make, and that's just one of those things. And weapon systems can be defeated. And that's not me anymore. Now I'm trying to build up my psychic skills. But the thing is, though, is if I did have money, if I had the $1 million, hell, I would be changing the world with that money, not living the good life.
I do have to say, if I had the money that I once had, there would be a hell of a lot more partying in Las Vegas. I can say that.
You're honest. You're being honest.
I am honest. I'm a people watcher, and I love going to Vegas and just having some fun. But that's all about me.
I'd build a studio, Dave. You'd do the same thing I would do, Dave. Come on, you'd build a studio.
Oh, I can tell you right now, Uncle Jimbo's cabin would be highly technological here. I can tell you that. The Great White North would have its own little log cabin, seriously, because right now I'm out of my basement, but there would be an actual log cabin. I can tell you that. You're right on that one. You are definitely right.
If I had the money, I'd build a studio. I'd be broadcasting TV. I'd be the next RT, basically.
As a whistleblower, the information that you received, how much of it do you think the public is ready for? Because there's a different side to this, Steve. You have that information. You're willing to part with that information, put your safety on the line, you've risked and lost everything, as you just mentioned. Yet, for the most part, the public still seems to have very closed eyes on everything. How do you see it?
All right. Well, this is the thing. When you get to a certain point, or certain depth, or whatever you want to call it, you find out that these people believe that the public, as you say, are essentially animals and incapable of intelligent thought and not worthy of life. Okay, this is how most of the people on the surface, and when I say most of the people, I mean just about everybody, they believe that all of these people, like when let's say I'm up at the Getty and I'm having one of these meetings with these crazy people, and then I'm driving home and I look out and I see the city of Los Angeles and I think about the 10 million people out in front of me, and I realize that they're all expendable in the eyes of these people, And then that's where I made my decision that I would choose the other guys and not the Getty people, because because you see, to be one of them, you have to accept that you're better than everybody else, and they're like animals, and that you're like a god amongst these things. So that's a big part of it. I know I got away from your question. I want to answer your question properly, but that was one point I wanted to make really quick. Could you ask me a question again?
Well, just basically how the public sees what you're saying. You're filled with information, and yet their eyes are closed.
All right, so keeping in mind that these people feel this way about everybody in general, one of the things is that they look upon the public as being stupid because the public does not believe in aliens, does not believe in UFOs, does not believe in psychic skills, spirituality, ESP, all that sort of thing. That's one of the judgments that they make, is they look down on all these people that do not believe all this stuff, and they think, oh, they're these idiots. They're so they're old fashioned. They don't even understand that we have mind control and star travel and everything else. So that's the differentiation. So when we try to reach out and tell these people the truth, and they fight back at us and they say, give us proof, show us evidence, and you're like, oh my God, I am the evidence, I am the link. They say, show us a link, I am the link. What more can you do? It's very, very frustrating, but it's not like these people. You see, that's the thing. These cavers, these New World Order types, they depend and they rely on the masses to be really stupid. And we work our butts off to try to change that. And yet those masses that we try to change, they work so hard to resist it. And it's frustrating as all hell, because it's so easy to say, yeah, you New World Order guys, you Illuminati, you're right. Everybody's stupid. They deserve to die. Go ahead, push the button.
Well, and that's the fear of it. I mean, they're able to cover it up because they have promoted, whether it's the government, whether it's the media, they have promoted that the Super Bowl is more important than what the government is doing. The size of Kim Kardashian's ass and the fact that she just got ripped off for $10 million in jewelry is more important than Hillary's cover-ups. Everything seems to happen. The minute we see some sort of government scandal coming up, we know, and it's predictable now, that there is going to be a story that is so superfluous to what is going on, yet it's a diversion to the topic at hand. Do you agree?
Well, I think so. I think most likely, except the one thing I don't agree is I think Kim Kardashian probably staged that robbery for insurance. I mean, come on, right? I don't think she got robbed. I think she just traded in her jewelry for some cash. But no, sorry about that, Dave. You're right, though. The public, humans seem to thrive on drama, and when you talk about the television stars and the celebrities and all that nonsense, it really is drama. And to be honest with you, I'm trying to think right now how I can actually inject a little drama into my programming just to kind of lure in some of these people that seem to need it so badly.
What do you think? I think it would be great. I'm trying to do the same thing with this show. That's why we do it 7 nights a week. I'm here Monday through Friday. We have a weekend host who comes in, James Tyson, for Saturday and Sunday. That's what we're trying to do. But the problem is, the one thing that I have found is, as long as people are living on that 24-hour society where everything is go, 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 go until they sleep, the hard part is trying to get that hour to 2 hours, even 3, of people trying to make that emotional commitment to take the time and meditate around a show like yours, or a network like yours, a network or a show like mine, because they don't feel they have the time and they don't want to listen. And if it doesn't catch their attention, well, let's turn the channel because we've made it nice and easy.
Well, that's true. You definitely have to come up with some sort of content that's going to generate a little bit of excitement. And that's not always easy to do. And sometimes you might have a program and you think, wow, how can this not attract the people that you're trying to attract? So it's definitely a lot of work, isn't it?
It is. It really is, because I don't think a lot of people are really ready for a lot of these messages. And I know people around me myself that aren't ready. And, you get that eye roll, and I'm sure you've got it quite a bit as well, Stephen, and you recognize that eye roll that, well, they're not ready for that message. How do you try and break through that? How do you try and get someone who is unconvinced or not willing to listen to take the time to give you that 5 minutes or that hour to say, hey, just listen to me once?
Wow, you mean that depends on if you're talking about somebody that you're friends with, a stranger in the street, or if it's somebody you're trying to reach out to through social media to talk to on the radio. Tough call. You've got to draw the line at a certain point. You've got to look at how heavy the programming is and what your likelihood is that you're going to be able to reach that person, and you got to make a decision and cut your losses if you're not able to do that. That's one of the sad things I've found, because we don't really have enough time to reach everybody, so we've got to try to reach as many people as we can. And if somebody's going to fight you, it's more efficient to move to the next person. Hey, Dave, give me about 2 minutes. I'll be right back. Okay?
All right. We got Stephen Kelley with us. He's taking just a quick break here as we continue on. If you are trying to listen on Revolution Radio, for some reason, we cannot get the Skype feed to connect with Revolution Radio tonight. So if you can hear this listening at spacedoutradio.com, we are trying to make things happen there. It just does not seem to be working for tonight. And it's funny because everything on my end is updated. Sometimes the technical gods just don't want something to happen. So maybe that's the case tonight. I don't know. I really don't know. But we'll check it out. We're going to continue trying to hook up with Revolution Radio. It just does not seem to be doing it. I do know that there are listeners tonight listening in on Wolf Spirit Radio. I appreciate you taking the time to check us out. And JP, thank you so much for throwing us on the station tonight. Always appreciate to have Wolf Spirit Radio around a couple times a week. It's always a good one. So thank you guys for tuning in.
I'm back.
All right. That's all right. I was just rambling, my friend. That's okay. It happens on this end. See, that's why I'm a radio guy, because I learned that dead air kind of isn't good. It isn't good at all, my friend.
It's hard to do. I mean, you do 3 hours. That's pretty rough. I know. And even the best of us, your buddy Kyler is like, I know he's like, oh, I don't know if I want to do more than an hour. Oh my God. I'm like, oh gee, I like you. In radio, we're happy to get more time, right?
Well, you know what? When I started the show, it was originally 2 hours, and it was something that my audience, believe it or not, I had no intention of going 3 hours, but you have to listen to your audience. Mm-hmm. And I absolutely love the fact that they pushed me to do 3 hours. It's because of them. They wanted more of the message. They wanted more of the guests. They wanted more of the interaction. And at some point, you have to just stand back and you have to say, hey, let's do it. You want it? I'll make the time for it, and you do it. But those are people who have connected and have really wanted to buy in to what you are doing, because not all media is the same. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the media right now, Stephen, because you brought up a real thorn in my side. And I used to be an avid follower of Alex Jones and InfoWars. But I'll tell you what changed me on that. As a journalist, and I spent 10 years as a journalist, the one thing that we were always taught is, A, never make yourself part of the story, and B, always stay down the middle. Okay? You are the person who is the voice, the eyes, the ears of the public. You are the public judge and jury, because your job is to hold people accountable. We've learned over the last 15, 20 years that the mainstream has gone from reporting the news and seeing people like Dan Rather, Walter Cronkite, come through over the decades, and we've seen it all of a sudden switch from news to infotainment, where, hell, you get somebody like John Podesta. If John Podesta would have released that tweet to Walter Cronkite or somebody along those lines who had a real passion for telling the story, that story about his famous tweet on February 13th, 2015, where he said, my biggest regret of 2014 was not securing the hashtag disclosure of extraterrestrials, or something along those lines, that would have never been dropped. That story would have never been dropped. Yet we see it happening day after day. Look what's happened with Hillary, the emails. Nobody's grinding her or the FBI anymore. It's kind of like, well, that's old news. Let's move on, instead of going after them, which is the media's job. Now we have the alternative media, Stephen, where we have people like Alex Jones who had the ability to take those people who were starving for the real news, starving for the real story, and for people to hold these government officials and other people accountable, and it's turned into fear-mongering. Mm-hmm. Okay? And I don't like that.
I have an explanation. I think I understand why Alex Jones is useful to a certain degree. Okay? And that is the Illuminati does apparently have something in their protocol that requires them to advise everybody before they do something. And I think in a way Alex Jones serves that role, because if you look back at what he's done in his career that's of any note, I would have to say the only thing that I could even think of is the whole Bohemian Grove thing. You know, he was famous for kind of exposing that and sneaking in and telling a lot of people about the Bohemian Grove. And I give him credit for that. But if I think back on that now, I think, well, you know, that could have been providing a service to the Illuminati just to kind of give the Bohemian Grove a little publicity that they had needed to get out there so that they could control the information anyway. Does that seem right?
It does, but I'll tell you where I got turned off by him. A week before the Super Bowl, I was following him on Facebook, and he goes live on Facebook saying, "We have breaking news. The Super Bowl is rigged. We know who the winner is. You have to tune in a couple of hours, and I'm going to break it to you who wins the Super Bowl." So, of course, he gets everybody hyped up because everybody needs to know, what has Alex found now? And he comes on and says, "My breaking news is the owners and the sponsors win the Super Bowl."
Dick.
Are you kidding me? So you fear-mongered your audience in order to get them to respond in the ratings. He then did that exact same garbage, and I'll call it garbage because it's not journalism. He did that exact same garbage when it came to that $1.3 billion Powerball, saying that InfoWars has learned who has won the Powerball, and he comes on 2 hours later and says it's the lottery corporations who are taking your money. Well, no shit, pardon my language, but, you know, give us something that we don't know. That isn't, and that's the fear-mongering that is going on. So now people, Stephen, can't trust the mainstream media, and they cannot trust the alternative media because that's into fear-mongering. The mainstream doesn't care. We got the fear-mongering on the other side. Where does the public now turn for their information?
I remember before we started the call, I was telling you a story about something that happened tonight. Remember, and I said I was going to save it for the show. This is actually a good segue for that.
Go for it.
Okay, well, one of my hosts, a guy named Richard Kelley, he had this guy on tonight as a guest. And, of course, I'm producing, so I try to stay out of it. But when he's proposing, he's passing himself as sort of an alt-right philosopher type person. I'm like, okay, great. Well, then I get his contact on Skype, and I find out he's in Kiev. And I'm like, oh, great. You got an alt-right guy that lives in Kiev, Ukraine. That means he's a bloody fascist, hardcore, and the worst kind. And I'm like, okay, we'll just play it by ear and see what happens. I said, the red flag question is going to be, what do you think about Putin? And anyway, we go through the whole show, about an hour and 45 minutes, and he said a lot of things that are kind of wacky, but I pretty much stayed out of it. But then the host started asking about Putin, and he started getting into this. I'm listening to this stuff. There's a 1 minute lag, of course. And he's like, oh, well, Russia's really bankrupt, and they're broke, and this and that, and they need us to. It's like, oh, I'm like, really? Oh, my God, you guys, you're so far. This is so far off. And then what he really, and this is where Alex comes in, he, right before I burst onto the scene, he said, I get all my information from Stratfor. He goes, I follow Stratfor very closely. And then right after that, he started getting into attacking Iran. and saying how they were just the center of evil because they were doing this and that, and how they were, how dare they want to sell their demand real money for their oil instead of taking dollars, things like that. Just incredible propaganda. And I got on there like, oh my God, what the hell, dude, what are you talking about? Because my network, first of all, produces a show for Novo Russia TV. We actually have a TV show that broadcasts live from Donbass. And this guy's going to try to tell me that these bastards in Kiev that are trying to commit genocide on these people are okay, and that Putin is the bad guy. So that wasn't going to happen. But the thing is Stratfor, of course, are the people that underwrite Alex Jones. That's the money bags for Alex Jones, and this is Israeli Zionist propaganda. And that's the thing. When I hear this Zionist Nazi character of the worst kind start saying that he's getting all his cues from Stratfor, I'm thinking, okay, so that's the thing. That's got to be the red flag for everybody, and the very fact that is the money behind Alex Jones should tell everybody that he is nothing more than a mouthpiece for the Rothschilds and Zionist Israel.
Let's get into some facts about the media. The media is someone that is very disappointing on the mainstream. Why do you think people are still tuned into ABC, CNN, Fox News, when they know they've taken political sides, they've taken infotainment to the next level? Why do you think they are still going there, Steve, instead of taking the time to research, maybe finding a show like yours, finding a show like mine, finding people who can speak about these topics of what is going on a daily basis? Do you think that the people, the public, is ready for that message, or do you think that the media has them so controlled of what they should and could listen to that they're not even interested in researching it, except for the few who are starting to awaken?
I think that the people that actually watch network TV anymore are, as a demographic, are relatively old. They're the geriatric generation for the most part. It's like, for instance, the average age of the average viewer of Fox News or, say, CNN is 60, 70 years old. That's the main demographic now. So these are people who have habits, they die hard, and they're programmed to continue watching these sources that they trust, and they're just really never going to probably ever switch over and learn about the internet. There's also a large contingent of people who are poor and are relatively limited on the type of programming that they can access. So, they don't have the cable, or they're just of the sort that, like you said, they're going to be watching the football or hockey or some silly thing, Food Channel, or, and I'll tell you, I don't watch TV, so it's painful if I'm in a room and I see it. But the commercial that they put on the TV now truly are affecting people psychologically, and they definitely are brainwashing. There's all sorts of different manipulations that they're using with the modulation of the light coming out of the TV to the sound and the digital frequencies and the depriving of certain musical notes, this kind of thing. So it's a painful experience. And and of course, a commercial, just the words, of course, in the script are enough to use neuro-linguistic programming and all that sort of thing. So I tell people that if they're in a room with a television, that it's really unhealthy. It's bad for your brain. It's probably bad for everything. It probably will give you cancer just to even be close to it, because of the potential for signals and waveforms and wavefronts being transmitted at you through the various delivery systems that you would find with a TV.
It is so frustrating. Would you agree on that? That just the way the public is getting... I mean, let's take the elections here, for instance, okay? When we look at the elections that have happened here, for years, Stephen, we have heard people say, that the tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorists have it all wrong. They're nut bars. They are people who really shouldn't have an opinion in talking publicly. And yet here we go, the 2016 presidential election. The Democrats have been caught rigging the Democratic nomination with Hillary instead of Bernie. Mitt Romney comes out publicly in a press conference saying we have to sabotage as Republicans Donald Trump, and yet nobody has given any type of credence to the conspiracy theorist who has been saying for years this has been going on. What is your thoughts on that?
Well, obviously, I don't like to use the term conspiracy theorist. I think that's very derogatory. Fortunately, I've been somewhat immune from the attacks that I would think I should receive. I'd like to think that when all is said and done, we're going to see, for instance, you didn't really say Trump, but I think that Trump is going to take this thing away. It's going to be really difficult for them to steal it. And if they are successful in doing that, I think it's going to get ugly really quick. I think it's going to get ugly no matter what. But that is a really positive opportunity that we have there for change. Frustration-wise, though, I just got to say, and I know this isn't really exactly responding to what you're asking, but I think that we can't really wait for these people to change, and we can't really wait for these people to do the things that need to be done. I think that we need to try to do something ourselves, and this is why I've been pushing this Getty thing so hard. And this is why when I go on Press TV or RT, I get up there and I say these really inflammatory things designed to just completely destroy the order as it is right now. And until we're ready to do that, and I know Mr. Trump is not ready to do that, even if in his heart he wanted to make all the changes need to be made, I think he also probably would try to do it in such a way that would cause the least amount of disruption. And I believe that the Band-Aid has to be pulled off fast, not slowly. Okay?
Oh, I get that. You have to pull it off fast.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of pain for some long-term gain. Absolutely. And let's face it, we all hate when that Band-Aid has to be pulled off. But on the flip side, when the Band-Aids are taping the eyes shut and the ears closed, that newfound sound and sight, though, a lot of people may not be ready for that.
Well, that's true. That's true. And but that's where we come in, okay? And I this is the thing that I really know that we're being successful, And it used to be that I would say that we need to spread out the fear, okay? Because the fear is the biggest issue right now. Everyone's, we help dispel fear through our courageous example, by doing what we're doing and having balls of steel, if you will. But at the same time, we need to, if we do fearmonger, we give out this information in a teaspoon at a time on a regular basis so that the people don't freak out as they receive it, and we try to give it to them with equal amounts of hope and equal amounts of answers. In other words, if you're going to tell somebody a whole bunch of bad things about what's coming in the future, you really need to spend an equal amount of time giving them options and tools and ways that they can go about making sure that they can minimize the effect of these negative things that you just exposed them to. And nobody does that in this business, and it's really important that, because we thrive on hope, okay? So when you're a guy like Jordan Maxwell and you come along and say, oh, we're screwed, we can't do anything, it's awful, there's nothing we can do, it's awful, it's not going to get any better, it's like, dude, that's not what you tell people. No. Yes, it is bad, but we do have the power to make it better, and it's up to us to make it better, and that's why we're sticking our necks out, because someone else out there might think, well, yeah, I'm just one person, and I'm kind of afraid they're going to hurt me, and then they say, wow, look at that person saying those things that I wish I could say, and they're still alive. Wow. Maybe it is okay to say these things, and maybe they aren't so powerful as they think they are. So that's what we're doing, right? And my heroes, in fact, people ask me, who's your favorite person in this truth movement? And I got to say, Bill Cooper, Gary Webb, and Phil Schneider. You know, those are my heroes, and I don't see anybody that measures up to them.
Are we talking about the same Phil Schneider that was in Dulce?
Yes, the one and the same.
I came into this just a couple of years ago, and I've seen the Phil Schneider videos on YouTube. Do you think he was taken out, Stephen, or do you think that he actually...
Oh, yes, of course he was taken out. My God. He was strangled. His arm was wasted by his being attacked by his gunfight with these aliens. One arm was shriveled up. He was supposedly strangled himself with a telephone cable. A one-armed man strangled himself with a telephone cable. It's no more incredible than Gary Webb, who shot himself in the back of the head twice. You know, it's little things like that. And of course, Phil Cooper, he was egged on, and that was death by cop. You know, that was a setup, so he was assassinated. But yeah, all of those guys were taken out. Of course they were.
It is a little ridiculous that it would go that far.
But Dave, here's my question to you as a journalist, one journalist to another. If somebody was to come to you and say, who can you possibly think of that stands in their shoes of those people, who would you pick?
Oh, man. That is putting me on the spot, Steve. It really is putting me on the spot. You would hope that it would be, someone who has maybe given the ultimate sacrifice, that their message wouldn't go in vain. Yet, the government has done a great job at suppressing that type of information, even though it's all over the World Wide Web.
Mm. Well, they haven't killed me, but, aside from me, who else is there,
Have they tried?
Well, from what I understand, they told me that they can't kill me. Okay, that's what they told me, the Getty guys. They said I was in the can't be killed club. But I thought they were going to kill me many times. When I found out about this base underground, my brother and I, same day, we both found out the same day. And I thought for sure, oh my God, we're dead for sure now. But it didn't. Not only did it not happen, but I had dinner with the trust fund manager of the Getty, and he said, well, we can't kill you guys. You're in the can't be killed club.
What the hell is the can't be killed club?
I don't know. He didn't elaborate, man. That's what he said. He goes, you guys are in the can't be killed club. You don't have to worry about that stuff. Now, okay, I can give you my interpretation of what that means, but
we have about 3 minutes.
Okay, well, that just could mean that it's some sort of cosmic thing, or that they're Templars and they're supposed to be protecting me and not hurting me, something like that, royal blood type of thing.
That's pretty heavy that they cannot come and get you. What do you think of, say, a whistleblower like Randy Kramer, who says he spent 17 years of his 20 years in the service on Mars? Are you buying that with the secret space program?
Okay, again, as an observer, I take everything with a grain of salt, but with him, I take it with a hell of a lot of salt. Okay, that's putting it lightly.
Okay, Jordan Maxwell's doom and gloom.
He's a Mason. He's kind of on the dark side. He's I respect him and all that, but I've been very close to him, and I've been on the stage with him, and he's kind of on the dark side.
What about the recently passed Max Spears, super soldier?
Totally on the dark side, Luciferian hardcore. He was the worst type of Luciferian because he was a Luciferian with a sweet voice. Very deceiving.
How come there never seem to be any female whistleblowers?
There's a few out there, but they don't. Okay, it's a fear thing. It's really a fear thing. In fact, I know one right now that I'm taking on as a host, and she's a former CIA remote viewer. And when I say CIA, it's like Templar. It's kind of like the same. It's like same people I'm working with, and but she's just one woman against the world. She's not like, we don't all have the huevos. It's like we want to team up. and band together and find strength in each other. But that's probably one of the reasons. And then there's, like, for instance, there's female whistleblowers, like, for instance, Dr. Judy Woods is and her 9/11 thing. She's pretty famous, and I think she has a lot to offer, but the only problem is that she is too focused on selling her book. She will not do interviews. I've never been able to get her to do an interview, and she does not have an open mind. She won't consider that there's some other source of the demolition other than a space weapon. So it's like, come on, woman, you're not helping.
On that note, we're going to hop out for our first break of the night here on Spaced Out Radio. Our guest is Stephen D. Kelley. He's a former CIA/NSA contractor, and he is coming out with some incredible information. We're glad to have him for the next 2 hours, as he's going to go the full gamut tonight on the mighty SOR. We'll be right back right after this.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, News Director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries, so tune in at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Had a run-in with ghosts, maybe Bigfoot, or seen lights in the sky? Hi, I'm Mike Schmidt from the SOR Sightlines. I'm here to investigate your sighting. Head to spacedoutradio.com and fill out a report on the Sightlines. All your information is 100% confidential, and I will help you figure out what you've been seeing. File your report, and let's find out the answers together.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest. From Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Oh, there's only one way to rock. Loud and proud. In high definition. Radio 702 rocks. Las Vegas.
Have you ever had an extraterrestrial experience? One you just couldn't explain? Well, maybe I can help. Hello, I am Samantha Mullet. On the second Tuesday of each month, I will join Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio to bring a human aspect to ET contact. It's something I've lived with my entire life, and I'd love to help you understand. Let's share our experiences. The ET Experience, the second Tuesday of each month, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Rivulet Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, rivuletrndr.wix.com/rivuletrndr.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up. Enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium, Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on two mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. Two mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Do you have a topic or a guest that you'd like to hear on Spaced Out Radio? Let us know at spacedoutradio.com, where you can sign up to become a Space Traveler member today. Or you can find us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on our Facebook page, Spaced Out Radio Show. Gloria's famous song, Bumblefoot's on Spaced Out Radio. Bill Cardwell in the SOR Space Travelers Club has set the password, Hugger Mugger. He actually typed one out I can pronounce. Hugger Mugger is your password if you're an SOR Space Traveler member. Bill is actually even the latest winner in our monthly draw. Thank you, Bill, for being a space traveler. We really appreciate it. Tomorrow night on the show, Troy Taylor will talk with us. We're going to talk American hauntings. We're going to be doing a lot of paranormal this month because it is a lead up to Halloween, where on Halloween night we are actually going to do a live Ouija board session with Karen Dahlman right here at Spaced Out Radio. Tomorrow night, Troy Taylor, American Hauntings, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to say hello to everyone listening in on Wolf Spirit Radio, on Revolution Radio, on Truth Cat radio server. Thank you, Stephen D. Kelley, for allowing us to broadcast there, as well as in the Space Out Radio chat room on Spreaker and the SOR Space Travelers Club on Facebook. Good to have you all around. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Find us on TuneIn. Download our podcasts on iTunes, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. While there, you can join the SOR Space Travelers Club. It's only $5 a month. You can also check out our resident guitar god, Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, who is the official music of this show. Read up on the SOR Space Wire from Eric Markham. Check out our latest blogs as well. If you have a sighting that you cannot figure out, you want someone to investigate it, go to our website, spacedoutradio.com, fill out a Sightlines report. Mike Schmidt, our investigator, is going to get a hold of you. Everything is 100% confidential, and we're here to help you out. Tonight's guest is Stephen D. Kelley. He is a whistleblower, former CIA and NSA contractor. Stephen, welcome back. It's good to have you around here because I love these topics. It gets me enthralled. It gets me interested. I do a lot of different shows, from UFOs and ETs to Bigfoot and paranormal, but there's something about having someone with your stature and your credibility on this show that really is enlightening and opens our eyes up. And I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us.
God, I'm flattered, Dave. God. What is it? There's a line out of Star Wars. I'm just a simple man trying to make my way through the universe. Right? Something like that. What's that line? That's from Boba Fett.
I'd have to hit up the wife. She's the Star Wars freak in this house.
Yeah, that's a Boba Fett line.
I want to focus a little bit on something that you have talked about quite a bit, and that is ISIS.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a firm believer, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I am a firm believer that ISIS is the creation of the United States government. Now, a lot of people may not like to hear that, but when I see pictures in Syria of John McCain hanging around with the leaders of ISIS as they were getting ready to form, that makes me quite suspicious. Do I have a right to be suspicious on that?
Oh my God, it's just so dirty and disgusting. And let me just cut to the chase. When Donald Trump is standing up there on the stage next to Hillary Clinton, and this woman has the audacity to question him over his taxes, when she is hiding emails, and the crime isn't the fact that she hid the emails or had the server. The crime is the fact that the emails reveal that we destroyed a country and stole their weapons and started ISIS with those weapons. That's why we destroyed Syria, and we're to this day we are still shipping weapons from Libya to ISIS. Did I say Syria? I meant to say Libya. Sorry, my Gaddafi. So yeah, we destroyed Gaddafi and his country illegally, which is a horrible crime against humanity. And now we're taking his legitimate resources, the military that he built that we claimed was so terrible, and now we're taking those weapons of destruction and funneling them straight into the hands of the most ruthless, brain-dead idiots that we could find, and that is what we call ISIS.
It's amazing what religious indoctrination can do when you have a cause, especially if it's around God or Allah.
Well, this is the thing, and I've said this on RT, and I've said it on Press TV, and I've even seen the State Department pick up on this in their explanations, and that is that the people. First of all, it's sad to say that the world is so screwed up that people are disillusioned at all and feel the need to resort to this kind of crap in order to try to make things right. If we hadn't screwed it up in the first place, this wouldn't be happening. Now, the fact that they're using this, religious indoctrination and what have you, and geographic nonsense, is that we've taken the dregs of society, those particular cultures, we've taken the uneducated, the unemployed, undersexed young males and shipped them off to a country and give them a gun and sell them and say, go out there and rape as many Christian women as you can find, and you're going to go to heaven. And here's some money. Oh, by the way, here's some drugs. We're doing all that. So it's evil. We're so evil for doing this.
Why would we do this?
The key word is Satan, man. Seriously, it is. The key word is Satan.
Can you define that a little bit further, please?
All right, sure. All right, let's look at it this way. And I'll tell you, this is something I'm all about breaking it down to the common denominator and going straight for the jugular. I don't like to dick around and poke at the stones at the bottom of the pyramid. I want to go and take the eye at the top. Go straight for the eye at the top. And like, for instance, the other night I was on RT, and they were talking about Aleppo and the ceasefire and the relationship with the Russians and all that, and the Geneva talks and all this nonsense with John Kerry making threats about Russians going home in body bags and crap like that. And I had to respond to this, and one of the things that I hate is having to respond to dialogue that's being forced, when I think that we should be directing the dialogue into other places that it needs to be directed at. In this case, we were being focused on the United States being the adversary to Russia because obviously United States troops are being killed right now in Aleppo because they're stuck in there like rats. And there's nothing we can do about it except for get all pissed off and start making threats, because there is no way the United States can institute a no-fly zone. It's impossible. The Russians control that country. They have a de facto no-fly zone if they choose at any moment, and that will extend over most of Turkey and Iraq and pretty much all of Israel. And that's the real fact. But the real fact is that Israel's the problem. No one wants to talk about Israel. And every chance I get, I try to remind those Russians that when they're done with Aleppo, when they're done with Raqqa and Mosul and all these places that need to be cleaned out, they need to also go clean out the Golan and bring that back to Syria. And then maybe while they're at it, they can go help out those poor people in the West Bank, in Gaza. And then the world might be a better place to live. You know, and I'll tell you something. I have a show on my network. It's called Live from Palestine. And the host is a journalist. He's a photojournalist, but we give him a radio show. And he's internationally recognized photojournalist. And I'll tell you, he lives in the West Bank, just a little north of Jerusalem, whatever it is. And that is a damn war zone. That is the real life. Since he's been broadcasting, the night, 22 hours after his first broadcast, houses in his village got raided. You know, he was involved. He was right there. You know, this is how hardcore. And he comes and his show, he talks about these things that they're doing and the people that they shoot and the things that they're doing to just make life horrible for them. And I've seen it. And the way they build these settlements right in the middle of everything, and they just steal the land and everything else. It's really bad news. And it's so depressing, and yet there's what can we do? What can we do to help? You know, and
what can we do?
Well, what I tell him is that, first of all, what we can do is liberate Aleppo, finish that job, and then go liberate the Golan. And then we can maybe talk about something with going on with the West Bank. See, that's a problem over there. Me personally, if I was going to be president and I had to solve these problems, I would basically institute an amnesty policy. You know, you have to have an amnesty policy. That's just the way it is. And that means is that you can't have the hatred. So that means that what the Zionists are doing, you can't go around. You can't take that back. You can't undo that. You can stop it, but you can't undo that. Because that's punitive, and amnesty in the future has to be based on a non-punitive system. We live in a system right now that's based on punishment, and we have a greed-based system that requires punishment to function. And these are one of the things that has to be removed from our society, is this concept of punishment. You know, that's why our if you look at our prisons, they're built for punishing. Whereas if you go to, say, Norway, the prisons are built for rehabilitation. You know, it's a big difference. Punishment versus rehabilitation is a big difference. So anyway, that's kind of a philosophical thing, I suppose. But no, Israel. And I don't want to come off as whatever, but I'm an anti-Satanist. Okay, so if you're a bastion of Satanism, then that's really what has to. The Rothschilds obviously built Israel. They're using it as their future of satanic capital, as they are in Kazakhstan. If you look at what they're doing in Kazakhstan, it's the same thing going on there. And if you look at the large-scale geopolitical situation right now with respect to the Middle East and the Ukraine and Russia and what's going on with the refugees in Europe, this is obviously a major operation being carried out by the Khazar Mafia to destroy the ancient enemies of the Khazar Empire and to reestablish the Khazar Empire and the ancient kingdom of Solomon and connect the two, which have never been connected for, 1,000 years. And this is really what they aim to do. They aim to recreate the Kingdom of Solomon prior to the breakup, and they want to include the entire Khazar Empire, which will basically stretch all the way up to Kiev and Moscow, pretty much.
And how do you know this, Steve? How can we, as a public who doesn't know this information, listen to what someone like yourself is saying and say, this is truth, this is what they're trying to do? How do we know that?
Well, it's history. It's all there. You've got to do your homework. You got to do your research. If you really want to, you could look at my videos, because I spell it out in these videos. In fact, I'm not sure what network I was on when I did that show, that particular show. But I did the history of the Khazar Empire. And this is one of the big things that people don't believe, is they think that the Khazars were just some barbarian nomads who decided to become Jewish one day. No, that's not true. They actually are the descendants of the tribes that were captive by Assyria. And those tribes became somewhat barbaric because they were isolated from each other during the 250 years that they spent in Assyria. And that's why when they were released, they went north into the Caucasus and became these somewhat barbarian, nomadic hunter-gatherer tribe that was the basis of the Khazar Empire. So people just have to study that. And I'll tell you something. Here, let me throw this out for you, Dave. This is something that you need to know. The history of Russia. You know, I'll admit, I just learned this recently. People think of Russia, you think that's a country that's been there all the time, right?
Absolutely.
You think it's had an ancient history. Well, it doesn't. Before Russia was the Khazar Empire. And nobody remembers the Khazar Empire because it was utterly destroyed and wiped from the history books. And now they don't want anybody to think about it because they're the enemy. They're still the ancient enemy. Anyway, the Russia basically was started by Vikings who came up from the, whatever it is, the Baltic there, and they sailed up those rivers into the Ukraine, what is Ukraine, basically, and they conquered all that area around Kiev, and I believe they took the, whatever the hell the river is, I'm not sure if it was River Don or whatever, and they got into, from there they were able to get into the Black Sea, Sea of Azov, and because of their longboats and their ability to get themselves all over this territory via these rivers, you know, they could row upriver. They were able to conquer the entire territory, and they started a capital, and their capital was Kiev, what is today Kiev. Okay, and back in those days it was called Kiev Rus. Okay, and this was the basis of Russia. This is where Russia came from. So these people that were Russia were these Vikings, basically, Scandinavians, all right, and that they conquered the entire area from Kiev all the way down to the Black Sea and back up to the area of Moscow. Now, from there really wasn't anything to the east of that, so they essentially conquered everything. They went to the rest and conquered the rest of the country, right? Well, eventually they moved their capital from Kiev, which was essentially on the border. I mean, by now the continent, they've got practically the whole continent, and their capital is Kiev, which is like right there on the border with the rest of Europe. So they move it inland, and they set up Moscow, and that becomes their new capital. So all this crap going on in Ukraine with these guys hating Russians, it's like, excuse me? It's always been Russian. You know, before it was Russian, it was Khazar, which were pretty darn evil people, and they were Jewish, and nobody wants to talk about that. And when Russia was formed, basically, after hundreds of years, the Khazar inhabitants, what was left of them, eventually were allowed to become educated and become part of the community and work in government and also to become teachers and work in the universities and things like that. And what do you think happened after that?
All I know is my Ukrainian heritage got railroaded, my friend. Railroaded.
Well, I'll tell you something about the Ukraine. If you look at the whole, what they call the Ukraine, it was made up of bits and pieces of all these other countries, and then what did they do? Even Khrushchev, he decided, here, you could have Crimea. And then Poland, they took part of Poland, they took part of, what are all the countries that they took pieces of to make Ukraine?
I believe Latvia was a part of it, Lithuania.
Uh-huh.
Oh, goodness. There's one more in there that I just cannot put my finger on.
Well, I know Poland was one.
Yes.
Moldova?
Possibly.
Moldova. Obviously, Russia was part of it. It was give up territory to make the Ukraine. I'll tell you something else. Let me just throw this out. This is a tangent, but this is something I learned from interviewing people on my show. Lithuania. People don't really think of Lithuania as being a very significant country, right?
Yes.
You think Lithuania, it's like, what did they ever do, right? Well, to be honest with you, from what I heard, Lithuania was responsible for two very important groups that originated in Lithuania. And one was called the Bund, and let me see, what was the other one called? I believe it was the Zionists, something like that. But basically, these two groups the Bund became the Bolsheviks, and the Zionists became the Zionists. But all that came out of Lithuania, and that gave birth to, Bolshevism and all the worst stuff, that came out of Lithuania. Crazy. So what part of Ukraine? Chernobyl? No, I'm kidding.
Believe it or not, my relatives are from, I don't even know, but I know it's around within a 20, 30-minute radius of Chernobyl.
Of course.
and the only thing I know about my family's history over there is that my great-grandfather, he, at 15 years old, him and his best friend were stowaways on a ship, and this came right after the Bolshevik Revolution, and my great-grandfather's brother was killed fighting the Russians. And so because at that point the Russians were killing most men to kind of get the threat away, especially young men, him and his best friend actually ran down to the port.
So who's this? The Cossacks, the White Russians, Belarus?
Yeah, the Bolsheviks.
Okay, Belarus. Is that a country next to the Ukraine?
Yes.
Okay, maybe they gave some territory.
And then he hopped on the boat and fled to Canada.
Yeah.
And basically made his way across Canada by hopping on trains and eventually found a Ukrainian community in northern Alberta where he set up roots.
There's a large Ukrainian community in Canada.
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
I've definitely run into that. But I'll tell you one thing that I've also noticed is that the Banderites, a lot of them after World War II took refuge in Canada.
A lot of people did. A lot of Dutch did after World War II as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know my family, at least part of one side of my family, came over here. I'm pretty sure actually during World War I, and they were Germans. I've seen pictures of them with the Kaiser helmets and stuff. But they always say there's something else. I think they said they were Polish. Nobody wanted to admit they were German. It wasn't popular to be German back then.
No, not at all. I want to get back to ISIS for a minute.
Sure.
Because we do know that this is American-made, and if people who don't know that ISIS is American-made, then you got to take the blindfold off because the evidence is obvious. If I can find it up here in Littletown, British Columbia, and all you have to do is search John McCain ISIS, and boom, it pops up. How do we rectify the world of this evasive species without going into some sort of genocide in order to wipe them out?
Well, okay, as far as a genocide is concerned, we really have to be careful about using words like that because, for instance, if we look at this from an operational standpoint, based on, say, territory and ability for this group to act as a cognate entity, we have to look primarily at their presence in Syria. And again, we're talking about ISIS. I'm not really talking about Al-Qaeda as a whole. Okay, that's a little bit bigger. But if we're going to talk about ISIS per se, in particular, politically, from an investment standpoint, as far as the United States is concerned, it was very necessary for them to control Aleppo because if they couldn't, that was the only way that they would be able to suggest that they had a legitimate claim to being more significant than Assad. But now, because of the campaigns going on right now, that's become sort of insignificant. And so what's happening is that they, as an entity, are becoming phased out as we speak, which is excellent. And the United States, for the most part, has lost this propaganda war. I think most people on the street, your television watchers, and your people who aren't really up on it, and even some of the people that might be listening right now, may not be aware that these are the end days right now for ISIS. They are on the ropes, and this is why they're threatening World War III, because those were our ground troops, and we invested heavily. And one of the major issues about what's going on in Aleppo right now is that all of the forces that truly, the proof, like you said about the proof of who was responsible for this, it's in Aleppo. The proof is in Aleppo. And they just destroyed this command headquarters that they were using for coordinating all the various different groups, because obviously when you talk about these, this group versus that group, there's a bunch of ridiculous damn groups, and trying to get them to act in a coherent form like a real army requires a pretty intense command structure. And the Russians, because of our attack on the Syrian army, our 1 hour attack that killed 90 Syrian soldiers, which was just heinous, the Russians basically gave us a big screw you and destroyed our command post and killed all the high-ranking personnel that were there. And the people that were there, the at least 30 people that we know of, officers, were very high. They weren't just average soldiers. They were high-ranking CIA types and State Department types and military generals and what have you. And there were Americans and Israelis and Turks and Saudi and probably Jordanian and most certainly there was Israeli. So many Americans and Israeli died that day. And that was, if you want to talk about World War, there you go. That happened. And yes, the Russians did kill a bunch of these troops, but we're killing Russians. So there's nothing the Americans can do about it except have John Kerry threaten to send Russians home in body bags. And it's going to be a matter of time before we see the first SS-300 actually taking out an Israeli jet or an American jet or a British jet or a French jet or whatever. But it's going to happen. And so I don't know. And again, also you got to consider that there's certain factions within the U.S. military, and I think that you were aware of this too, and I'm sure Canada's got to be the same way, that know what's going on and know they're getting screwed over and don't want to have any part of this. So we'll see how long this can go on before somebody looks to some courageous individual to point them in the right direction.
So are you basically saying then, if I hear you correctly, that the United States is pissed off with Russia because Russia had enough of what was going on with the mess down in the Middle East and said, we're going down there, we're going to go clean up what this mess is, and we're going to hold a symphony of destruction right across the board. If you're involved in it and you are hiding things, we're coming to get you because enough is enough.
Well, Russia has been doing a very good job of trying to destroy ISIS, not degrade. Like the State Department likes to say. They use this word now, degrade. It's like, it's so retarded. But anyway, when they fired those cruise missiles into the command post that housed all those, Western coalition generals and what have you, it showed a couple things. One thing it showed is that, Russia knew that they were there. Okay. And they could have done this at any time. And they didn't. And when you think about it, how many lives would have been saved? How many missions would have been more successful for the Syrian Arab Army? How many offenses would have, ISIS offenses would have failed if they had taken out that command post sooner? So, in other words, the United States handed Russia the opportunity to do something that really needed to be done. They needed to kill those people, and they needed to destroy that command post. They needed to destroy all the resources and the intelligence located therein. And I'll tell you something. Aleppo is a damn barrel, and those people are fish in a barrel. And it did not matter that those generals were inside of some cave that they were using as a bunker, because those cruise missiles took them out. Right? Just like the Americans think we're so good at doing, that happened to them. And they are so pissed off. They can't even, and I like I said on RT the other night, speaking to all the soldiers that are out there doing this stuff, they don't care about you. When you die, they're going to leave your bodies there. They're not going to recover your body. And when Russia goes in there and they retrieve your body and they try to turn it over to the State Department, they're not going to take it. Just like they're not taking any of the bodies of any of the soldiers that they've captured in all of their offensives that have been going on since they entered. They've captured many CIA personnel. There's and obviously those ones that are in the cave, there's probably nothing left of them.
No, they're probably dust right now.
Yeah, part of the mountain. So yeah, and you know what? As the bulldog for Israel, of course, John Kerry is frothing at the mouth over this stuff. He's got Netanyahu breathing down his back, screaming for revenge. And then there's John McCain, whose boys just got taken out, screaming at our defense chief, saying he wants a no-fly zone, and they're saying that means all out. That means World War III. What are you talking about? And John McCain's trying to say, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. We can do this. It's like, really? Ever since those SS-300s went in, it's over. In fact, there's no World War III with Russia involving conventional weapons because of the SS-300s, 400s, and 500s. And then you factor in the T-90 tank and the Armada tank. Our venerable M1 tank is totally obsolete. And we're getting ready to go field that against the Russian T-90 tank that we can't even destroy anymore with a TOW missile or anything. It's a joke. Our armor, hell, the armor on the thing about armor nowadays, it used to be they put the reactive armor. They used a couple different things with armor. They use ceramic steel sandwiches and what have you. They call it Chabam armor. But now they have, of course, the reactive armor. And if you see the T-90 tanks, they have a design that's very, very efficient. And they have this reactive armor all over the place that destroys anything that gets close. But what really makes the thing work well, and this is something that the Israelis have perfected also, and that is that they have these electronic systems that essentially detect the incoming threat and neutralize it electronically before it even gets there. And our tanks don't have that. The Russians have that. It's like it's just like Desert Storm or whatever. We're going to go into battle and we're going to go, oh, gee, maybe we should give everybody body armor. We can't do that again.
What I don't understand here is, on the surface of this planet, there seems to be so much tension with everything. We see the tension of what's happening in the Middle East, the tension that is now being brought up in what they're calling the new Cold War between Russia and the United States, or the East versus the West. And yet, here we are sharing an international space station with them, like we're good old buddies. Like, I don't understand how this works, Stephen. How on one end we can be such enemies, yet in the United States, with NASA, they are still buddy-buddy with the Russian space program because they're using the Russian spaceships fleet to get up to ISIS, to the International Space Station. We're sharing experiments, we're sharing technology with them. Like, I don't understand how we can be so extreme on one hand and yet extreme on the other.
Well, there's a lot of secrets out there that nobody's going to talk about, and a lot of it has to do with the Nazis and what really happened after World War II and their secret space program and all this. Because technically, we have a treaty with Russia involving all that stuff. We actually have a secret space station with Russia floating around Mars right now that nobody knows about.
I love the secret space program. You're talking my language there. Can we get into that after we get a couple questions in from our audience, if you don't mind?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. This one from James. Why are Satanist millionaire ex-politicians representing the USA with talks to other countries? Example, John McCain and Skull and Bones, John Kerry. What is your take on this, Stephen?
Well, guys like John McCain and Kerry and all that, they have promises of solid gold condos in these bunkers, and all they've got to do is do their job, and they're set for life, and they don't have to die with all of us on the surface. So they're looking forward to taking their place amongst the elite. That's why they do the stuff that they do.
Mm-hmm. Mario has a couple of questions. He is asking, Steve, 95% of the world leaders, Vladimir Putin has stated, whether it's official or not, that 95% of the world leaders are either hybrid or reptilians or a combination of both. Do you believe in that?
Well, I'd say there's some pretty strong evidence that the Queen is certainly of this thing. But the thing is as observers, we have to basically be ready to accept almost anything, at least somewhat, and take all information as if it was possible. So yeah, that's one of the hardest things to accept of all of the information that we get presented to us in this business. But I have to say that there's probably something very, very close to that. And I'll just say this, okay? I'm going to share this with you, Dave. All right, this is for real. In Hollywood, not too far from me, there's a location where they have, it's a private property. And on this private property, there is like a club built. It's in like the back of someone's home. It's a rich person's home. And these people meet there. And it's sort of set up like a bar, but it has a big patio in the back of this bar. And there's a huge statue of a reptile. Okay? And this is a meeting place for movers and shakers. It is a satanic meeting place. There's no mistaking what it is. These are reptile worshipers who also are satanic. They practice satanic rituals at these meetings. They do things like have abortions performed at the location. Abortion is now the biggest form of satanic blood ritual because it's the best for them. They consider a baby that hasn't even been born to be the highest form of human sacrifice of all. That's why they love abortion so much. But at this particular location, which is actually owned by someone who happens to be a mover and shaker in Hollywood, a big important producer, it's also, the people that go there are not just producers, directors, stars, wannabes, people in all various stages. They are representing everybody that's anybody in any kind of medium that has any influence on people, including groups like Occupy and things like that. These so-called political groups that would tend to represent us in our fight against the New World Order. The people that are actually the loudest voices in these groups are part of these lizard clubs, if you will. So, when you get down to it, the common denominator, once again, is Satan. And if you don't believe in it, well, they sure do.
Does that mean that their goal with, especially in North America and Western civilized countries here, especially in Europe, we see a lot of countries becoming more atheist, more unbelieving, going away from the churches because they're sick and tired of seeing millionaires not paying taxes, or they're tired of seeing the Catholic Church do nothing against things like pedophilia within their walls. Do you think that they are trying to take advantage of the fact that people are becoming more agnostic and more atheist because they are done with organized religion?
All right, well, see, this is the thing. When you talk about organized religion and things like the Catholic Church, you have to understand that any time you have a group like this or any sort of an organization which is going to deliver rules and control structures, that this is a infiltration of a group. And this is the thing about this is what the dark side does with the humans. We're just the slaves, and if the slaves start getting together, they'll use one of their little meat puppets to basically infiltrate the group. So yeah, obviously Christianity has been infiltrated from a long time ago, and that doesn't mean that Christianity is bad. And I try to tell people this all the time, that Christ had nothing to do with the Inquisition or the conquistadors or all the heinous, their pedophilia or anything like that. He didn't write the Bible. This was all came afterwards by humans. So you can't blame Christ for that. That's kind of like saying, well, the American flag is responsible for all this racism. It's like, wait a minute, the flag's an inanimate object. You know, it's like some human did what you're talking about. It's not, they're two different things.
Follow-up question from Mario. He's asking, the Russians are apparently having a drill starting tomorrow that sees a compromise of 40 million Russians hiding. Is this going nuclear? What are your thoughts?
All right. Well, it's actually a little bit bigger than 40,000. It's
40 million, I believe. 40
million, yeah. Okay, what they're doing, this is a civil defense drill, that's all. They're practicing for to basically put people into bunkers in case there's a nuclear attack. And I got to commend the Russians with respect to that, because the bunker systems that they've built are for the people, to protect the people. They're not to protect the billionaires like we did here in this country. In fact, the only way that you're going to be able to get into one of the bunkers here in the United States is if you're one of their you get kidnapped and you get to be one of the slaves, and maybe if you're lucky, you'll be able to wash the feet of the queen, when she's in her human form, and then maybe you won't be served for dinner if you're a good slave. But that's really what we're dealing with here. So I give the Russians a lot of credit, and I'll tell you something else. The Russians issue their citizens gas masks. They don't do that here in the United States. The Russians make a gas mask designed to fit on a child and a baby. Americans don't make gas masks to fit on children. They don't give a damn about the citizens. So, what is it that they know that we don't know? And no, I'm not afraid of them. My God. Actually, we should be afraid of them, because if they wanted to do a first strike on us, it would totally behoove them to do that. Now, I do also tell people that we have scalar weapon systems, which means that we can protect ourselves from ICBMs, as well as cruise missiles and hypersonic torpedoes and everything else. And this system was actually activated in the Southern California area, and it creates a dome over the entire system. The transmitter is somewhere out in the middle of China Lake, I believe, out in the middle of the desert out there. And when it puts out its energy, it creates a dome with that goes out to the Pacific, and it goes all the way, covers pretty much most of California and Nevada. So that's what we have. And doesn't even matter if they do a high altitude blast, because that dome the energy won't even pass through it. So, this is why they act the way they do.
All right. Question from Wolf Spirit Radio, and this is from Fedator. He is asking, in your opinion, Stephen, are there any relatively benevolent aliens, factions that are trying to stand up for people so none of this can happen, kind of to protect the people from the cabal?
Well, yes, most definitely. There are good guys. The Palladians certainly fall into that category. But again, you could divide the whole universe right down the middle into two sides, the service to self and the service to others. And the good guys are the service to others side. And they tend to be like Star Trek. They don't interfere. And it's not their job to get in here and get in the way. But they will fight against the dark side on our behalf. And yeah, they are doing their best to try to prevent missiles from nuclear war from being started. However, they were unable to stop Fukushima. And Fukushima, of course, is nuclear war, but they've been trying to do this to us for so long, and the good guys have been stopping it. But they managed to get away with Fukushima. And if it wasn't for the good guys helping us, the Pacific would be much worse than it is. But the reality is that we have to use fourth density technology in order to repair the Pacific Ocean, and we have this technology right now, but we would have to basically defeat the New World Order in order to get it.
All I know is that when they started finding here on the West Coast pieces of metal washing up on our shore with radiation in them, that's when I stopped taking home fish for family and friends to eat.
I won't even take my dog to the beach.
I hear you there. It is that scary in regards to it. How Shar wants to know in the Spaced Out Radio chat room how the Templars are involved with all of this. What is their purpose?
All right. Great question. The Templars, of course, are a branch of all of this. And in order to really understand the mechanics of how it's all set up, you need to look at the Magna Carta. And the Magna Carta, there's actually two versions, one for the common people and one for the nobles. And in the version for the nobles, you'll see that the Templars, the Hospitaliers, Rosicrucians, the nobles, the Vatican, and the Crown are all equal partners in this agreement. And basically what that means is that they all respect each other's rights, but they all have to give the Crown 20% of everything they own. And the Crown, basically, the way it's set up, it's like in a trust, if you will, which means that they're not actually taking 20% of everything they own and handing it to the Queen, but technically the Queen says, all that stuff you have, 20% of it is mine. And that's how the world has been run since 1100 or whenever the Magna Carta was signed. Seriously, that's how the world is run still to this day. Now, the Templars, though, of course, were actually set up by the Jesuits. And the Jesuits were a infiltration of the Catholic Church by the Hebrews. Okay, it was one of those things back in the Middle Ages where the Hebrews would Zionists, whatever you want to call them, the dark side, were trying to infiltrate the church, and they set up the Jesuits, which they called the Army of Christ or something, of course, which is clearly what it's not. And the Jesuits were responsible for setting up the Templars. And the Templars originally, the purpose of them was to get the knights out of town, because the knights really didn't do anything in society. They just took money and raided and stole what they needed to eat and have booze. But otherwise, they were they're kind of like the police are today. They're like the road pirates that went out and extracted money so that they could feed their habit. So the Pope came up with a scheme to take back the Holy Land, and this would get all the damn knights out of town. Now, the Jesuits created the Templars in order to basically use this crusade to get into the Holy Land so that they could do archaeological excavations at the kingdom of Herod, which I believe is in the Golan. If you were to look for it today, I believe it's in the Golan. And they dug into they camped out when they conquered Jerusalem. They basically dug up did this archaeology work, and they were looking for the records, and they found the ancient where the storage rooms where the ancient census records and things were stored from back in the times of Jesus. And the purpose of this was to identify and locate the birth records and marriage certificates and all this sort of thing for everybody from the time of Jesus so that they could ascertain that Jesus indeed was married to Mary Magdalene and did indeed have children. And this was the whole purpose of the Templars. So once they completed their archaeological, their expedition, they basically got the scrolls or whatever it was that they dug up, and they ran back to their little temples or whatever it was in Europe. So they used this to basically bribe the Pope and said, look, we're going to disclose what we found unless you acquiesce to our demands. And one of the demands was that they could reinstitute the concept of usury banking, which of course was illegal since the time of Christ. And this is, of course, what the Jews and the Rothschilds are very famous for, is this usury banking. So the Templars basically had a lot of money, and what they set up was a system where if a noble was to wanted to join the Templars, he would take all his money and he would give it to one branch of the Templars, and they would write it down in a record. And then he would travel to Jerusalem, and he could go to another Templar fort, and he could say, hey, I have this money deposited with the Templar branch in France. I'd like to make a withdrawal, please. And they said, oh, sure. And that is the modern banking, where that's the basis of modern banking. And of course, this got out of hand because the Templars had so much money, and a lot of it came from taxing the travelers that were going back and forth to the Holy Land, that they started loaning this money to the kings in Europe for creating wars and what have you. And people will tell you that this is why the Templars were crushed because of this. That the king of France didn't want to pay off his debt, but the reality was that they were worshiping Baphomet. And a lot of people in our little trade here, like Laura Eisenhower, will tell you that Baphomet is some sort of a male energy nonsense. The reality is that, yes, Baphomet represents a male fertility symbol, but it's Satan, all right? It's a damn Luciferic symbol for a demon. So I don't want to hear anything about that. But yes, these Templars basically... they're not Christians, even though it's kind of like the Masons. Until you get to the higher levels of the Masons, you're not really going to know that they're satanic. And the Templars work the same way. They also developed very strong psychic skills, and they used some of the techniques that they used to develop their psychic skills were basically like mass masturbation rituals and crap like that. Really bizarre stuff. Okay, I can't even begin to understand what exactly they did, but because a lot of people associate Templars with homosexuality, and in the respect there, yes, that did happen, but what they were actually doing was they were performing rituals that were basically tantric in nature, to where essentially, if you know anything about Tantra, that's essentially getting to the point of orgasm and stopping. And they believe that this somehow gave them energy. And technically, if you follow Qi and that kind of philosophy, you get that, right? Did I lose you, Dave?
No, I'm sitting back here listening, and it's kind of funny because the minute you started talking about the Templars, we had a bunch of people all of a sudden have their signals on this show start to skip.
Big surprise, huh? Well, okay, Templars, CIA, NSA, same thing.
They all just need a hug, in reality.
Yeah, they all just need a hug. They need a little love.
We got about 3 minutes before we're going to hop out to another break here at the top of the hour, and we're with Stephen D. Kelley, and I'm really enjoying this, Stephen. You are, as this is my first time, besides online on Facebook, actually getting a chance to chat with you, and I am pleasantly happy with the amount of information you are able to provide. It is absolutely fascinating to listen to you speak. Like when my microphone's on mute, I am literally sitting here with a big smile on my face just listening because I'm wowed and in awe by it all.
You're having good radio and it's not on Revolution. What the? Oh, well, that's their loss, huh?
I'm sure it happens. It happens.
Well, I think You should be on Studio A. That's what I think.
We are just a rogue group of individuals here who are just trying to get a message out. And
Just a humble human being trying to make your way across the universe, right?
It's the Canadian in me. What can I say? It's just the way it is. I'll wave the maple leaf a little bit here, but we try and just make it as easy as possible for everyone to kind of get their own piece of information on a nightly basis. But honestly, though, more about you. It's been an awesome surprise, and I'm so excited to be able to get into some other topics with you in the final hour of tonight's show, because I think I could probably do 6-8 hours with you and not even touch the tip of the surface yet.
It'd be cool if you could actually make some money from this. Huh.
Really?
No, I don't know. You get, I'm just kidding. But
one of these days, there is a goal there. There is, I'm not going to lie, there is
well,
a goal
you have subscribers, and I'll tell you, I look at, when I was listening to you're talking about, your little subscribe and do that thing, I thought, oh gosh, I got to do something like that. I got to figure out some way to get a couple bucks to help pay for this stuff.
Well, you know what? It's everything that we have ended up doing in here, I have to admit, it's been at the behest of myself and more the audience pushing me. So it's been kind of cool to watch them kind of take control and helping us grow. So it's kind of cool. I'm going to get you to hold on. We're going to hop out. We're going to hop out for our final break. Stephen D. Kelley is with us, whistleblower, former CIA, NSA contractor. He'll be with us for the final hour. We're going to hop out for a break. Glad to have you all along for the ride. It's a good show tonight. Really good show. Stay tuned for hour number 3 coming up.
The SOR Sightlines is a place for you to find answers to your strange experiences. Hi there, this is Mike Schmidt. If you have had an encounter with ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, ETs, or anything else that doesn't make sense, head to spacedoutradio.com and file a Sightlines report. All information you give is 100% confidential, and I will personally help you find the answers you need. SOR Sightlines, your answers are a click away.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where 2 members of our team will be available to answer your questions. We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with the U4 Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 mediums and a large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you checked out the SOR Spacewire at spacedoutradio.com yet? Every day we post the latest stories regarding the weird, strange, and completely unbelievable. From cryptid and UFO sightings to the conspiracy world, we tackle it all. Hi there, I'm Eric Markham, Spaced Out Radio's news director for the SOR Spacewire. And if you have a story, I want to hear it. Email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Every month on Spaced Out Radio, we look into the deep and dark reports of cryptids roaming around the world with me, Rob Morphy, from Cryptopia.us. I would love it if you would join me and host Dave Scott as we delve into the most arcane stories and reports regarding creatures of the unknown. My job is to hunt down the details and bring the evidence forward to you. These aren't your regular Bigfoot stories I'm talking about either. You can find out more about crypto history at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to connect with us on Spaced Out Radio? Head to spacedoutradio.com to check out the latest shows, guests, and sponsors. And don't forget to sign up for the Space Travelers Club. You'll find all you need at spacedoutradio.com. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio tonight. Final hour with you. If you are an SOR space traveler, your password set by Bill Cardwell is Hugger-Mugger. Hugger-Mugger is your password. Finally, he puts one in there that I can pronounce, so I actually appreciate that. Thank you, Bill. Tomorrow night on the show, we're stepping into the paranormal, as we will do a lot of this month, the month of October, leading up to Halloween. Troy Taylor will join us. We're going to talk American hauntings tomorrow night on the show, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. We want to say thank you to everyone who is listening in on the Spaced Out Radio chat room, on Revolution Radio, Truth Cat Radio, Wolf Spirit Radio, and the SOR Space Travelers. Man, we're a packed house tonight. Really appreciate all of you taking the time to listen to Stephen D. Kelley. Before we bring Stephen back in, I do want to remind you, you can follow us on social media. We're everywhere. At Spaced Out Radio on Twitter. Give our Facebook page a like. Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show, for our archives. You can tune us in on TuneIn. If you have an iPhone or an iTunes account, you can download our podcast for free. And our website is spacedoutradio.com. While there, you can sign up for the SOR Space Travelers Club. It's $5 a month. With that, you get access to private group interviews, access to a special section on our website. Your name gets put into monthly prize draws, and so much more. Unlike the other guys who just give you access to their archives, not us. We're giving back to you because you're a valued listener. You can also, while on our website, check out the SOR Spacewire by Eric Markham. You can hang out in the blog section, read what we write on a daily, or make that on a weekly basis. Check out our resident guitar god, Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, who is the official music of this show. And if you're an experiencer, or if you've had an experience and you're trying to figure out what to do about it, you want someone to investigate it, come to us. Fill out the SOR Sightlines report. With that, we will get someone to get back to you ASAP. Mike Schmidt will get back to you, and we're going to follow it up with a report and investigation, and all your information is 100% confidential. Fill out a Sightlines report today. Stephen D. Kelley is our guest. He is a former CIA and NSA contractor. He is a whistleblower. He is someone who has come out against what is happening behind the scenes in a shadow government sort of thing. Stephen, welcome back.
Hey, Dave. Well, thank you.
I appreciate it. And you know what? We're also broadcasting on your own network, Truth Cat Radio, which is pretty intense. Now, the picture you have on Skype, whose cat is that? Is that your cat on there?
Oh, that little kitty there that we're using for the icon to represent the server is none other than Mr. Kitten. He's just a little rescue that I ran into here in the neighborhood, ran up to me and needed to be taken home to be cared for. And he's been kind of a little activist kitty since he's been growing up. It kind of rubbed off on him a little bit, so we decided that he would be the perfect kitty to represent Truth Cat. And, of course, I chose Truth Cat because I wanted Truth Radio, but I had to put something between radio and truth. And I thought, what better thing to have something like a three-letter word that I could be replaced with a picture of something that everybody would know what it was. So there it is, Truth Cat.
Works for me, my friend. Works for me. Hey, right before the break, you had mentioned about a little international pact between Russia and the United States, and you mentioned that there is another ISS-type platform that is flying around Mars.
Oh, yeah, that was a good subject. We should get into that, huh?
I love the secret space program. I am a firm believer that we have been to the moon. I'm a firm believer that we have bases on the moon. I believe we have bases on Mars. What is your take on where we have visited in this solar system?
Well, when you say we, if you're talking about Americans or what have you, then it that's a kind of a wide open question. But if you went back to, say, 1940s, 1942 specifically, Schauberger, of course, by this time was building devices capable of flying to Mars. Of course, back in those days, they were building them for one-way trips. But it's been suggested that and this is a really big deal, but of course, the Nazis went to the moon, they went to the Mars, they actually established bases there, they're still there, they're still on the moon, and then beyond. But they also, and this is kind of a big part of all of their exploration, is that they combined metaphysics with their science. And this enabled them to achieve levels of advance that the United States, of course, was unable to do. And this was something that was brought up at the time of the Philadelphia experiment by Tesla, who was running it up until the time that he decided to sabotage it. And that was that he said science and metaphysics had to blend, or science could go no further. And the reason for that is because of the reality of the fourth density and the mechanics of how the universe is set up with a density system that is based on the ratio of the physical versus the spiritual. And in this particular reality that we live in is the third density, and the phenomena that we associate with this reality is only available in this reality, such as the electromagnetic spectrum. Most of the laws of physics and the types of energy and stuff that we're exposed to in what we perceive as reality are found on the electromagnetic spectrum. And it's been proven, and recently it's been proven again here by, there's another physicist, I'll bring him up later, but Tesla was the one that really started this stuff with his discovery of scalar. And goodness gracious, I thought the dog just threw up there or something. Anyway, when you take it to the next step, you've got guys like Victor Schauberger. They discovered the toroidal nature of all of this energy and what have you. But the thing is that when you are able to access this higher level of reality, if you will, which is what they did when they were able to communicate with the aliens and stuff like this, you get into the ability to utilize a spectrum which is parallel to the electromagnetic spectrum, which actually affects the reality of the level that's governed by the electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, and this is all basically, if you were to try to look at it and try to understand how it works, it's essentially sine waves. And if and I'm going to go off on a wild tangent here, but if you look at string theory pretty much represents soft matter that hasn't become a specific matter in our third level of density. But in the fourth level of density, the string theory works because it's basically soft matter waiting to be turned into what we would consider matter here on this level of density. And you have to understand these things in order to do this interstellar space travel and things like this. And what happened with the Germans is that they set up these occult societies that basically started dealing with aliens, and good aliens or bad aliens, whatever, because they had the occult societies, they had good ones and bad ones, if you will. I don't really like to say good and bad, but for brevity, I'm going to say that. You guys, I'm sure you guys know who I'm talking about here, but the Vril Society was one of them.
Yes.
And what was the other one? There was another one. The woman with the long hair and all that. But anyway, between these two societies, one of them was more benevolent. Okay, it was kind of like this service to self and service to others. It's always going to go either way. In this level of reality, this third density that we're living in, you've always got the yin and yang. You've always going to have the opposite. Whatever happens, there's going to be an opposite. And this is just the nature of our reality. But so the point is that the Germans, because of their technology, were able to become very spiritually advanced. And spiritual advancement was obligatory in order to go to the next level, which is what you need to do if you're going to do space travel and interstellar travel. You have to become aware of the next level of reality, because that's how they get back and forth. Okay, and so light speed and all that crap. You get up to light speed, you find that out real quick. Okay, that there's no, when these people talk about wormholes and going over the speed of light, there are no wormholes. There's no going over the speed of light. It's very, very simple, and the same thing applies to time travel. And when the Germans did this, they basically were welcomed into the club, if you will. And a couple things happened. A, they established a new homeland inside of the Earth, in the hollow Earth. They called it New Schwabenland. You got to get over that right away, that yes, the Earth is hollow, and there's huge amounts of land and water and even a plasma ball floating in the middle of the Earth. That's their sun, and it's light all the time, and they've got a new country in there called New Schwabenland. So ever since those days, they've kind of been in charge. And when the United States had Operation High Jump, and they sent Admiral Byrd to command a fleet of ships and planes and personnel and submarines to go to Antarctica and to take out the Nazis, they got their butts kicked, and they failed, and they lost a substantial amount of men, and I think all the aircraft and half the ships. And they didn't do that because they were looking at penguins. They did that because they were fighting against advanced technology, and not only that, the Germans had help from beings, entities that lived inside of the earth. And the reason is because the ones that live inside of the earth tend to root for the little guys. And if the Germans were to come to them and say, help us, we're about to get obliterated by our enemies, they say, oh, sure, we'll give you refuge. We'll protect you. And that's basically what happens. So when we talk about the secret space program, the Russians and the Americans really have an alliance, and the alliance is intended to give them the ability to fight against these so-called what's left of the Nazis, the space Nazis, if you will. But the thing is that because of the technology, see, they can go just about, they're so far advanced. The Germans that had this technology, developed this technology, they're way, way ahead of us. Okay, hundreds of years ahead of us. Because of their spirits, because they embraced these spiritual things, and we cannot. This is the thing. It's like people when they talk about disclosure. You love that word, disclosure.
Love that one.
Yeah. Well, there's going to be no disclosure until the humans get spiritual, until the humans learn how to share and not be selfish, and that's just the way it is. And the Nazis, when they started flying around their little vrills and what have you, they hooked up with these Palladians or whoever it was they hooked up with. They basically said, look, guys, if you're going to join our club, if we're going to take you into our little center of the earth world, these are the rules. And, you can't do this and you can't do that. And so they're not the same people that you think of when you look at these old movies and stuff. But that's who all this... So like the Russians and the Americans, when they build their secret space program and all that, it's basically to counteract what the Germans have. And also to fight against the Palladians because they essentially work for the reptiles. And the reptiles, who are the service to self, is trying to defend themselves against the service to other, who are also referred to as the Galactic Empire. Or no, not the Galactic Empire, but the Federation, Galactic Federation. What is it? What do they call the good guys? Do you know?
Oh my goodness!
Something like that.
Put me on the spot, and my mind has gone blank.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, but anyway, and here's the kicker to all this stuff: is that when you get into all this alien lore, if you will, and you try to figure out who the players are and all the politics and all this stuff, what you really get down to is that it's still like something out of the Bible. It's still Christ and Lucifer, only it's kind of like set in a Star Wars thing. And, Lucifer is the Empire and Christ is the rebels, if you will, kind of a situation. It's it's almost like and then again, this is kind of weird, but this, from near as I can tell, I observe everything, I take everything with a grain of salt, but the way it looks, if I had to kind of throw this all together, it almost appears that the Anunnaki may be the Pleiadians, and they may be formerly bad guys, now turned good guys, and they may be commanded by none other than Jesus Christ. And it may be that their coming back here is to kick ass on the reptiles that have been running the earth, who are the bad guys, and that this is the so-called second coming and all that stuff. That's just a possible scenario that sort of jives with the Bible as well as what all these alien types believe in.
What do you think about someone like Andrew Basiago, who says he was a child chrononaut, someone who was using jump rooms to get to different places, saying that he used a jump room to get to Mars, to the moon. He's been around other presidents when they were children as well. It sounds so far-fetched, yet for the sci-fi geek in me, I want to believe it so bad. You're in the know. Fill me in.
All right. Well, first of all, I totally believe in the jump rooms and going to Mars and going to where have you. I mean, yes, we do have that. Al Bielek talks about it. Several people talk about it. It's basically connected to Roswell as well as Philadelphia experiment. All this stuff is all tied in. Andrew Basaglia, I've seen him in public. I've been following him for a while. He's part of the same circuit that I'm part of. I used to have this policy of never attacking someone else's message and always trying to put out a better message. But what really turned it for me is his running for president crap. And if you know me, you know that I'm also running for president, and I have a very comprehensive platform with about 45, 48 points on it that I think if actually were ever implemented would save the entire earth and bring us into a paradise. But hey, But the only reason I even did that is because I sort of got a little frustrated and sickened by Andrew Basaglia asking for money so that he could run for president. And I thought, oh my God, here's a guy who is an attorney who I assume has the ability to make a decent living, and yet he's going to try to convince us that he's going to save the world by this so-called disclosure crap. And because George Washington told him that he was going to be president, allegedly, in one of his excursions. Now, this is the thing. If you understand anything about time travel, and apparently Andrew Basaglia doesn't really understand what he portrays to understand, is that you'll know that in some dimension Andrew Basaglia is president. But reality, as well as the future, is based on probability. And the likelihood and probability of Andrew Basaglia being president is extremely negligible. And the way things work with time travel and with dimensions and with all that sort of thing, because you have to understand that this is all calculatable, and it's all there are algorithms that are used to control time travel. And these algorithms have to calculate probability, because you don't go into the future willy-nilly. You have to calculate these things extremely accurately, or you don't know where you're going to be. And it's all based on probability. And for an event to be certain, it has to be 90% or better probability. And if an event is 10% or less probability, it's considered impossible. And I would have to say that, yeah, sure, there's a tiny percentage of Andrew Basaglia being president. And so technically George Washington, if he indeed said that, would have been telling the truth. However, the odds of that happening are so incredibly slim that by time travel standards, it's not going to happen. And that's the most logical thing. And this is the thing. My yardstick in this business, this truth business, and this kind of came up earlier, is the whole money thing. And if you don't have a way of supporting yourself, truth is not a career. Okay? If you're like Alex Jones and you making a career out of giving people information, then you suck. And that's like being a psychic. If being a psychic is a gift, like a healer. I'm a Reiki healer. I'm a psychic. I do Reiki healing and all that.
So is my wife.
Yeah, but this is what I believe. I believe that if it's a gift, and it's just like if the Lord gave me special gifts that I'm going to use at the right time, I'm going to use those at the right time for the right reason. If somebody comes to me for healing, I'm not going to charge that person. I'm not going to charge for my gift. If I give them, say, a massage and then do a little Reiki, I'll say, sure, I'll accept a contribution for my massage. But you're not going to pay me for being a conduit for Christ's energy. I mean, it's a gift. It's not a career. So people who do, psychics who charge money, it's like whatever. It's what you do, but I'm not a big fan of that. I think the same applies to the truth business. If as soon as you start taking money for it, that becomes your focus. And I know that when I was in business, I was an entrepreneur. I had my own company for 20-something years, making lasers and stuff. And when I'm in that business mode and money-making mode, I'm in that mode. I'm not in the save the world mode. I'm in make a buck mode. Now, bear in mind, I made products that were to save the world. Of course, I designed them with saving the world in mind, and especially protecting citizens and our soldiers and making our country strong. But it was also to be profitable, but to some degree, right? You're trying to pay bills. But if you're trying to save the world and trying to pay bills at the same time, you're screwed, because you're going to focus on trying to pay those bills.
Oh, I know that all too well. You mentioned different timelines, that Andrew Basiago may be president or become the elected president in a different timeline. Are you a firm believer that there are simultaneous timelines going on as we speak?
Oh, most definitely that is true. But you see, okay, this is what's important, what people really need to understand. And that is the concept of density versus the concept of dimension. Okay. Dimensions are infinite. There's infinite dimensions, and all dimensions are choices which are calculated in our probability calculations. They're all variables, okay? So all the entire variables and number of variables that could go into all the different humans, whether they want to wear a red shirt or a white shirt or turn right or turn left or close the door or shut the door, these are all actions that all add up in laws of probability to create a future that affects everybody. And it's those actions and the probability of their effect on everybody else that determine the outcome of history. So all of these different probabilities or these different ways that history can go actually take place simultaneously at the same time. Obviously, you can't see that. At the same time, we have something called phases, and this is like time travel. And a phase is the length of time for a sine wave to travel from point 0 to point 1, okay, starting to one phase, one completion of its cycle, okay, because all reality is based on these sine waves, and the shape of the sine wave determines the reality, but the phase of the sine wave determines the time of the reality. So by shifting a phase forwards or backwards, in other words, you're starting the travel of the sine wave a little bit sooner or a little bit later, that's how you travel forwards and backwards in time. Now, you don't want to be doing this if you're sitting on the surface of, say, a ship like the Philadelphia, or not the Philadelphia, whatever, the Eldridge. Yeah, it was the Eldridge. Because then you might find yourself stuck halfway in the bulkhead or something like that because somebody screwed with your phase of your body, in your little reality. All of a sudden, you're in a reality where your phase isn't linked to that reality, and then you try to go back in, and it's got to be linked back up. That's like your biological clock. Everybody has a clock, that starts at 0. And if you are born into a world and your world is based on this clock, and then suddenly somebody takes your clock and shifts your 0 over, you're going to be in a completely different world. That's called phase shifting. And in the Templars, they have this technology. Of course, they've got the jump seats. We'll get back to Andrew Basiago, but they use this technology to shift. This is like something the Men in Black do. And what they'll do is they'll travel to different locations and different times to do their thing. And it involves this phase shifting where they're essentially popping in and out of a certain location. And that's really all it is that they convert their mass into a radio signal. And a radio signal is just a fancy way of saying a sine wave. And then they will shift the phase of the sine wave, and then of course they use a vector system to determine their where they appear. So this way they can travel back and forth in time, and they can go from one location to another. And I'll tell you one little tidbit that they told me is that they like to use really old restaurants that have been in business for like 100 years or more, and they'll phase into a bathroom, or a stall. They'll have a stall in the bathroom, and they'll phase into that stall. See, because the stall's always there. They don't tear down the restaurant. They know that restaurant's going to be there, for a long time. So it's a safe location for them to phase back and forth. How about that? Huh? A little time travel trivia.
There you go. Hey, have you ever met somebody from a different plane or a different timeline or a time traveler?
I've met a couple people in my life who were not your average humans, who I had to wonder about in retrospect what exactly they were. And the telltale, I'll give you the telltale signs. I mean, of course, these guys looked human, but the one guy, and he was a total caver. I don't know what the hell he was, but he acted like he hadn't been a human for very long, and he acted like he was really getting off on this whole being a human stuff. If you know what I mean. It's like he was enjoying the human suit experience a whole lot and just wanted to do all the things that humans do and enjoy it while he was in it. Okay, that was kind of a giveaway. Okay. The other one was this guy named Vince, and he was like a handler. He was the one that coined the term cavers. He called them cavers. That's why I call them cavers, because of Vince. And Vince tried to be a handler for me. I don't know exactly what he was. I guess he told me that he was like CIA, but he was really something else, because he was like the underground people, stuff that, and cavers, the guys that work from underground. But anyway, they killed him. They gave him a heart attack. But the thing that was really weird about him was that he talked very strange. He had a very, very strange way of putting together his sentences. And it would be hard for me to describe it. But he didn't just talk like this. He would write like this. And he used to this was back when the internet was kind of just starting up. And he used to create these little web pages, trying to advertise something. And the sentence structure and the syntax that he would use was just like, dude, when did you start speaking? I mean, it's like, where did this come from? This is weird, and I've never seen anything like it ever since. So if I had to think back, I'd think, yeah, that guy might not have been from here.
Have you ever met any extraterrestrials or had any contact?
I've had spooks and stuff, so I don't really know if that counts. And I've had, obviously, I don't know if you know this, but I worked really closely with the Billy Meyer people.
Right.
The elders, Lee Elders, Britt Lee Elders, Bob Welch, and the other guy, Colonel, what's his name? Stevens? Wendell Stevens. Yes. Anyway, I worked with those guys, and back in those days, this was all very new, and it was hard to digest. Okay, I didn't automatically accept it, but I have to say that when I saw all the stuff that Billy Meyer had, it was very convincing. But what really got me was the silver material that they provided. That had the microscopic machining, as they called it. And because I was involved in two things, I was involved in microphotolithography, and I was also involved in heavy electroplating, or they call that electroforming of ultrafine silver. So when somebody brings me a machined piece of silver of alien origin, I can look at that and go, oh my God, I know exactly what I'm looking at. And this freaked out the NSA, of course, and I know that this is why those people chose me to become involved in their stuff. Now, again, as far as dealing with aliens and stuff directly, They're not really allowed to mess with me, okay, from what I understand. Although I have had people close to me. My cousin was in my garage where I was running my electroplating operation when I wasn't there, and he got confronted by a pair of men in black that basically went into my garage and froze his ass, and then determined that he was not a threat, and then left and disappeared, did a phase shift thing. And I know this was not a hallucination because, what was going on. I was dealing with the Billy Meyer people when this happened. So that's pretty darn close to me, right? And I know when I was designing a laser, my 3-beam universal laser, which was the one thing that was supposed to make me $1 billion, and I never did it. They had some spook looking over my shoulder while I was doing it. And I could pick up on it. I knew there was something there. But, but as far as seeing, I've seen UFOs, don't get me wrong. I've seen, orbs and things in the sky, stuff like that. And I'll tell you something else. Being a laser pioneer person, I can tell you that almost everybody I knew in the early days of the laser pioneering stuff, these guys all were coming into experience with entities, and flying saucers were making themselves visible to these people. And it was funny because we all talked about it, but it's almost like anybody who had anything to do with this technology was getting visits by these things. And it's interesting because we could speculate: are we getting downloads? Are we being watched? What's all that about? But the thing is that we know from people like Corso in his book, The Day After Roswell, that the technology that was supposedly given to us by the aliens after Roswell was semiconductors, i.e., microphotolithographic manufacturing, night vision, or photomultiplier tubes, and lasers, in which case the lasers, of course, were ion lasers, but the basic laser technology was ion lasers. And then, of course, we would take the microphotolithography and learn how to create semiconductor lasers. But technically, those were the 3 technologies that we got from the aliens. And the microphotolithography allowed us to create semiconductor chips and computers, as well as semiconductor lasers, and eventually it's going to lead us to be able to make beam ships, because that's how beam ships are made. So, but the point is that I was exposed to all of those technologies. I worked in the fields that were basically all of those technologies. And not only that, I was a pioneer in, I was a pioneer in microphotolithography in a big way. Okay, in a big way. People won't even understand it because it's high-tech stuff, and I'd have to, you'd have to really understand this stuff to really see the significance. But when I started making semiconductor lasers, they didn't have semiconductor lasers. Lasers were glass tubes that broke. And I was making lasers that were tiny, that didn't break, that used a little itty-bitty battery instead of a big old giant battery, and could fit inside of a gun. It changed the whole world, basically. Right? You can imagine, right? But the point is that how could they kill me? Look at what I was doing. I'm too damn valuable to these people, I think.
I have had run-ins with 5 extraterrestrials.
Yeah.
The last one happening on April 15th, 2015, or April 20th, 2015, pardon me, while I was broadcasting this show.
Whoa, wait a minute. They came inside the little room there?
No, actually, there was one. I saw something move out of the corner of my eye in the window.
Yeah.
And this was in my old home. I had a studio set up at the front of my house in an old bedroom. I had a rancher-style house, and I thought, oh, crap, who's coming to the door? Because we had a house where everybody just kind of made themselves welcome. And I forgot to turn my outdoor lights on. And my next reaction was, well, my dogs are going to bark. That's not going to be good for radio. And I started, so my guest at the time, I was talking Buddha of all topics to a gentleman named Harvey Kraft. And he starts answering the first question of the night. I put my microphone on mute. I turned and looked to see who is out the window. And on the other side of the window, there were the giant black eyes with the giant gray head staring back at me. And I damn near fell out of my seat, Steve. And by the time, in that split second, by the time I looked back at that window, it was gone. And I stood up and I looked out the window because I would have seen anybody running away, and there was nothing there.
Well, they wanted you to see that, right?
Absolutely. The first extraterrestrial I saw happen in April of 2014. This one came 5 days after I actually saw a landed craft and was communicating with that craft from 150 yards away. And a friend of mine, good friend of mine, Samantha Mowat, who does a monthly segment on this show, she'll be on the 11th of this month. She and I walked into this forest behind my friend's property where this incident had happened. And we got about, I'm going to say, 75 yards into the forest. And she stops me and she goes, "Okay, Dave, I don't want you to panic. I want you to look that way." And she points north and tell me what you see. And this is 2:00 in the afternoon, not a cloud in the sky. And I turn and look, and at about 200 feet away from me, straight ahead, there was a being standing there about 10 to 12 feet tall. That was my introduction to extraterrestrials are real. So, it's quite interesting. Steve, are you still with us?
I'm sorry, I hit the stupid mute button. I'm sitting there muted, and I was actually responding to you while I was muted.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, it was pretty bizarre, man. Pretty bizarre.
I just wanted to say that, when it comes to the little gray guys, if you will, remember this is the thing, is that the service to self ones are the ones that are going to show their faces. The service to others, like the humanoid types, that for the most part you're not going to see them. You're really not they're not doing all the abductions and all that nonsense that the other ones are doing, and they pretty much try to stay out of the way. And if you are seeing them, you're pretty special, and there's a reason for it. But I don't know. That being said, I just have to think that me personally, if this was true, then there's probably a good reason why they don't get anywhere near me. And I gotta tell you, I sense
they might be jealous of your hair, my friend, because you got incredible hair.
You're looking at my Facebook pictures or something, huh? Is that what
I have been. I've got you studied.
That's like that. Oh gosh, I gotta tell you, the guy that works with David Icke, Richie. Richie, right? Not Lionel Richie, but he's got a show.
Okay.
Anyway, he's one of these David Icke people. But I've been on his show a couple times, and he's hair challenged, follicle challenged, guy. But whatever, and he chose these photos to represent me when I was on his show, and each time he managed to find one where my hair was down, it was all over the place like crazy, and I'm looking like a wild person. I'm like, gee, dude, it's like, really? It's not exactly like the picture I use when I'm on Russia Today or something like that, Press TV. Gotta go comb my hair. Those guys, they've never, Russia Today or Press TV has never seen me with my hair down. Well, at least not on TV.
Couple more questions from our audience, if you don't mind, because we only got about 17 minutes left with you.
Yep.
Shar is asking, what about the mantids? What do you know about them?
Okay. When it comes to these other entities like this, there's a lot of issues. First of all, We talked about the other dimensions and the other timelines. There's all kinds of entities on all these other dimensions and other timelines. We also talked about other phases. There's all kinds of different realities and different entities on all these different phases. One of the things that's been going on with the Philadelphia experiment, when all the screwing around by the New World Order, is they've been trying to shift our phase of the entire Earth and screw with us in order to supposedly delay time or protect us allegedly from entities in these different phases, like what we're talking about. But then there's also the different levels of densities, which is different from the dimensions or the timelines. The densities, of course, is a higher level of spirituality, and these go up to different levels. And if these are higher level density entities, like a lot of the aliens are, the gray ones, the Pleiadians, what have you, they tend to be from the 4th and 5th density. Then if they choose to come into this density, they don't have to come in all the way. They can be here partially. A lot of the entities that we refer to as sylphs or this sort of thing, I think that's the word, sylphs or something like that. They look like clouds. They could look like ocean monsters. They could look like things that are partially here, partially not here. Those are entities that function in both multiple densities and multiple dimensions typically. So these entities that you're talking about, they could be from that. And also you got to remember, a lot of crazy stuff was made by the Anunnaki when they were here screwing with genetics. Hope that answers. Sorry.
Another question from Mario. He is asking, what is your knowledge of Nibiru or the planet-sized objects within our vicinity?
All right. Well, Nibiru, the thing about Nibiru is that, yes, it is the home of the Anunnaki, and yes, it does make these big, long elliptical orbits and comes here and on. But the thing is about these Anunnaki guys is they are, for the most part, near as I can tell, third density entities, just like us. Their technology is not that advanced of ours. They actually have to wait until Nibiru swings around by the Earth to actually come here via rocket. I do not believe that they have time travel and interstellar travel perfected, such as the Pleiadians and all that. However, the actual mechanics of whether or not the Anunnaki are of reptoid nature, humanoid nature, service to self, service to others, led by Jesus, not led by Jesus, this I don't know. And this is why we have to take everything with a grain of salt, and we just can't trust anything until it actually happens, and then we have to have our own filters to figure out exactly what we're dealing with.
And Mario has a follow-up question in regards to this year's election. Do you think it being a two-horse race, or do you think that it would be we could see somebody like Jill Stein or somebody along those lines get involved as well?
The reality is that Trump is going to win every state by a landslide, and Jill Stein is really not going to be much of a factor. That's just the way it is. Bernie actually won the election and beat Hillary. He could have been a factor, but even if Hillary was gone, Bernie would still win. The establishment that's up to be defeated at this election right now is extremely corrupt, and this is nothing less. This is really what they say. This is nothing less than whether or not the country survives or is destroyed. So this is really, really scary. I think that the negativity that's being attached to Donald Trump is completely far-fetched and overblown. However, Donald Trump is relatively stupid, but at the same time, he's relatively naive, stupid. But at the same time, he's not a Satanist. He hasn't murdered many, many people like Donald Trump has. Bernie, of course, is a Zionist. He is a candidate of the protocols. Jill Stein, unfortunately, is also a closet Zionist. And I just, I'm sorry, ladies, dye your hair. And, there's no reason to have brown teeth like that.
Never a reason for brown teeth. Oh, man, you just hit the nail on the head right there, my friend.
Yeah.
Joe has a question.
Uh-huh.
Getting back to when we were talking about Mars earlier. Stephen, do you know why the early pictures from Mars rovers were all tinted red, and then slowly they removed the red tint from the photos?
Well, to be honest, I can only speculate to a certain degree because I don't work for Caltech. And if indeed there was, this is leading to some sort of hoax, I would suggest that, yes, there is certainly real estate out there that looks very similar, and it's very possible that a lot of film was made having one of these things driving around in a strange environment. However, I suspect that the Mars rover is legitimate, and I suspect that it is actually photographing some phenomena that they really can't explain. And as far as the color is concerned, there is a couple different possibilities for that. And again, remember, we're talking about digital cameras. This is certainly not... So whatever they're portraying with as far as color, contrast, brightness, etc., it's really artificial. And whatever colors that they assign is really up to the engineer that's controlling it. So the point being is that much like Photoshop, at any time they could take that image and tweak it to tweak the hue and what have you, or the saturation, and change the color. And I suspect that to some degree, because they're not actually standing there looking at it with their own eyes, they don't know exactly what color to tweak it to make it look like. So I suspect there's a little bit of guesstimation there as to trying to determine how to tweak the various different adjustments that would control the color output.
Do you believe that we have stepped foot on Mars? And the reason why I ask that when it comes to the rover, a few years ago on a different talk show, there was a lady who phoned in saying she used to work for NASA, and they actually watched people walk up to the rover to fix it.
Yeah. Okay, first of all, when Corey Good or Commander whoever, again, all these guys have tried to be on my show at one time or another, and I, for one reason or another, I had to reject them because they didn't come through as being legitimate. And that doesn't mean that we're not walking around on Mars, we don't have space marines and all this, because I believe truly that we have bases, and I believe that we truly have jump rooms. However, as I mentioned earlier, the Nazis did it first. So if we're doing any of this, it's as a result of cooperation with the Nazis as well as the entities that we made a treaty with after Roswell. So, and when Basaggio says that there's raptor type of device or animals running around on Mars, I tend to believe it. But what really kills it when I hear this stuff from a guy like Basaggio, which really makes me despise him, is when he says in the same breath that Barack Obama's mama was a real nice lady. Seriously. And Barack is a cool guy, and his mom's a real sweet lady. Really, dude? You kidding me?
Another question from Bob. He is asking, what do you know, Stephen, about the agenda, or what are shadow people?
Shadow people. All right. I can tell you a lot about shadow people. First of all, the dark entities are what exactly that. They're dark entities. And they are basically, if you want to see a dark entity, go take some DMT and go look at your buddies. And if one of them's possessed, you're going to see one right in front of your face. And basically, we have what they call light bodies. And if you go to the other side, you shed your skin and you get to see the other side. You get to see your light body, and it basically looks like these kind of like the gray aliens, only all speckly, if you will. It's sort of what we actually look like. Those are our light bodies. But a dark shadow thing like that basically will take up that space, will essentially absorb you and take up that space and hijack you. And they're not very nice, and they're not that hard to get rid of if you have certain skills. But again, the best protection against any of this stuff is service to others. And if you are of the service to others, then that puts you on the right side of everything in the universe, and that's the secret to everything. And it also protects you from all the target individual stuff, too.
I've seen one shadow person. It was weird, man.
Yeah.
It was weird for me.
What was he doing?
You know what? I was still working in terrestrial radio, and I was living in a basement suite, and about 3 weeks previous to that, I had heard a shadow person expert with Art Bell on the air when Art was still on Coast to Coast.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I was thinking about it, but I just thought, wow, that was just, it was one of those topics that was just intriguing. And in order to get to my door to the basement suite I lived in, I had to walk around the back of the house. Well, I walk around the back of the house and realized that my sensor light is on. So I slowed down, hoping it wasn't an animal, or because we had bears in the area, or cougars, or things like that, or maybe there was someone standing there, because you never know. So I took the corner wide and slow to see what was standing there, and standing at my door, staring at the door, was a shadow person. And it turned, it looked at me, it had no hands, it had no feet, it was very cartoonish, and then it turned and ran right through the cement barrier wall behind the house.
Ran away, huh?
Yeah.
Did you get any kind of communication otherwise?
No. I was way too naive to even understand the magnitude of that experience, man. Like, I was, going through a divorce that was pretty ugly, and, I just thought, wow, that's an experience I can chalk up that's never happened before. And that's the way, literally, I left it. It wasn't until 4 or 5 years later when I started having my own personal experiences that I look back at that and say, wow, that wasn't cool. That was actually kind of odd.
I'll tell you, we see, shadows like in the corner of the ceiling or up in the corner of the room, stuff like that. Or you see the little shadow will zip by you, out of the corner of your eye, stuff, that kind of thing. That's pretty common. And then there's the you're asleep and you got the shadow hanging over you when you're asleep, that kind of a thing. You're what do they call that, when you're frozen and what have you, and you can't move, and there's that shadow hanging over you. That's pretty common. But the thing about when I was in the doing the DMT and I saw this thing basically possessing this guy's mother, it knew that I was looking at it, and it knew that I knew it was there, and I was conscious that I was not going to do anything to bother it, but it was almost like, caught in the headlights sort of thing, where they play possum, they kind of act like they're not there. They'll look right at you and like, you don't see me, kind of thing. Oop, I just saw one now, son of a bitch. Anyway, but and then my buddy, he was a young guy. I was, like 20 years younger than me. He did it right after me, and he looked at the woman and he saw the same damn thing. And afterwards, he says, "Oh my God, did you see that?" I says, "Yep." So he says, "You saw that black shadow, didn't you?" He said, "Yep." It's like she's possessed.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Stephen, we're down to the wire here on
look at that,
Space Out
3
Radio.
minutes.
I know, man. It flew by. It flew by. I got people yelling at me because they want overtime, and I just can't do it tonight. I just can't. But
all right, we'll do it again some other time.
Absolutely. Stephen, before we let you go, I want you to just tell everybody where they can find your information on YouTube, your radio show. Fill us in. Take 30 seconds to a minute.
Okay, real quick, just the name, of course, is Stephen D. Kelley, StevenDKelley. If you Google me, everything will come up. The radio show, of course, is Stephen D. Kelley Show. The network is the Truth Cat Radio, www.truthcatradio.com. I got tons of pages. Please join all my Facebook pages and groups. And again, if you'd like to email me, it's law17gun@AOL.com. And again, you can find all my information on Google. And my book, which you'll also see on Google, is called Cities Under the Plane. And it's about my life story and about the Getty. And there's a big picture of the Getty on the cover. And if I wasn't protected, they would sue me for that picture of the Getty on the cover, because that is a copyright violation.
And on that note, my friend, thank you so much for also broadcasting this on your network, Truth Cat Radio. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I just got to remember to turn the recording off now, huh?
Exactly. If you're on the Space Out Radio side, you're listening to our guitar god, Ron Bumblefoot THAL, the official music of Space Out Radio. Tomorrow night on the show, Troy Taylor joins us. American Hauntings is the topic. We're going a lot of paranormal this month. Why not? It's Halloween. Let's get ghostly tomorrow night. Remember, follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Facebook. Give our page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can find the archives on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show, on TuneIn and on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. Love y'all. We'll see you in exactly 21 hours from now. I'll be here. I hope you're here. Mr. Bumblefoot, take us home.